This story began with two guys digging up someone's grave. The grave of Ning Tianlin's beloved son was written on the monument. The boss, looking at all this, called him trash. He asked his people to dig further. He smoked a cigarette and said that even after death he would not calm down. The guy who was digging the grave replied that soon everyone will know that they are not to be trifled with. There was no point in poking your nose into their affairs. The boss asked the child to dig faster. The second guy exclaimed that they would feed his corpse to Da Huang. The man who was holding a huge angry dog by the leash asked them to hurry up. After all, their dog is hungry all day. The guy with a shovel in his hands turned to the dead man and called him that idiot. It seems like the broken phone pulled. And then the scoundrel alone chased him for 2 kilometers. Did he really try so hard for the sake of the girl? Didn't he deserve to die? Why did you even rush to help? It's good that he died, that's where they go. The man shed a tear and said that he was sorry for Haizi. After all, my friend is in prison for premeditated murder and will now spend his whole life behind bars. That's why they won't forgive him. The boss gave the command to quickly dig it up and feed it to the dog Dahuan. The guy replied that everything was correct. Time has changed. Now no one appreciates such selfless people. If everyone knows that they dug up a corpse, no one in all of Jinchuan will dare to look at them askance anymore. The boss, without letting go of the cigarette from his hands, asked him to dig faster. We need to hurry before the farmers get to work. His guys asked him not to worry. They promised the gentleman that a little more, and soon he would see the face of this scoundrel. At this time, the guy who was being dug up seemed to see some red and yellow lights in front of him. The boy could not understand where he was and why nothing was visible except darkness and red lights. From somewhere, the boy heard a voice, who said that he was in a coffin. He was seriously scared and asked who was talking to him. The boy grabbed his head with his hands and raised one knee up. The world's greatest combat system, Xingjian answered him. The boy could not understand whether this voice was really coming from his head. The system replied that everything was correct and they communicate through his consciousness. Did he really forget everything? He was hit right on the bridge between the world of the living and the dead. The system reminded the boy of what happened to him. He became thoughtful and began to replay the moments in his head. Some grandfather approached him and offered him to drink menpo soup so that he would forget the past. They stood on the bridge between the world of the living and the dead. Then the boy saw something in front of him. In front of him was some kind of sign in bright white rays. This sign in the form of a ray descended from the sky directly to his forehead. The boy called the system a pagoda. Lying in the coffin, he smiled slightly. The system responded that everything was correct. The boy began to ask how it got into his body. The system answered the question with a question. Does he think that without her he could return to life? And then it seemed to dawn on him. He bulged his eyes and exclaimed that he was alive. Ning Tianlin is alive again. On the 7th day, he saw his parents and sister mourning him. The boy lying in the coffin thanked the system. He said, "Thank you to Xingjian." The system replied that there was nothing to thank it for. For the combat system, resurrection is a piece of cake. The boy began to ask what the combat system even meant. She replied that Xingjian was his name, and the combat system was a short name and description. The world has always respected strong people, and strength from time immemorial has been measured by certain indicators. The higher his performance, the stronger he is. For example, the strongest man is Lord Yanlo. He can't even imagine how powerful he is. As soon as he inhales, he is already pulverized. The boy immediately asked the system what about him, what his indicators were. The system explained to the boy that his combat power was estimated at 8 points. By the way, his guide estimated it at 100 points. The boy was upset that there was so little. After all, he plays sports every day and carries all sorts of bricks. Why only 8? The system asked him to be happy with what he has. For ordinary citizens, combat power is valued at only 5 points. And a tiger, for example, has 15. Ning Tianlin exclaimed that this is a very big difference. It is worth paying tribute to the ancestors. The system asked not to underestimate the difference of 3 points. Even that would be enough to kill a person. Ning Tianlin asked if combat power was everything. Let's say if he had a knife or a pistol, would he have killed the tiger in this case? The boy imagined a picture in front of him and began to add up his glasses to calculate the strength. The system responded that when a weapon appears in his hands, the combat power is multiplied by the amount that he initially had. Ning Tianlin immediately became happy. He asked what if he had the most powerful weapon in the world? Would he become omnipotent in this case or not? The stronger the weapon, the higher the requirements for the user. A person with great combat power can easily defeat a person with less, even if the second weapon is a pistol or knife. But if a person has high combat power, he can do whatever he wants. You can break any laws and regulations at your discretion. Money, power, beauties, and much more are all at hand. He asked the system if it was exaggerating too much. Can one person stand up to an entire country? If we take the same law, there is an entire state behind it. The system responded that laws depend on the people who make them, and these people depend on the state. At the same time, the state itself also depends on the person who has the greatest combat power. In fact, it's amazing that he still has time to chat. It would be better if he sorted things out and she showed him what was going on outside. The tip of the shovel was already approaching the lid of the coffin. The guy exclaimed, turning to his master, that he had taken out the coffin. The boss was delighted and gave the command to pull out the corpse. It's time to feast on their Dahuan. Let him pay for the spoiled fate of their Haizi, and everyone who dares to go against them will face such an end. Ning Tianlin realized that they were digging up his grave. Streams of cold sweat ran down his face, and then the shovel hit the coffin lid. The guys told the gentleman that they got him. The boss asked Erzi to stop digging already. He needed to prepare for filming. He asked to film the whole process, from the opening of the coffin to Dahuang devouring it. Erzi replied that everything was ready. He said that he would make sure that the video turned out intense and bloody. Haizi will scream with delight when he sees this. The guy didn't let go of the phone. He turned on the video and pointed the phone towards the coffin. Ning Tianlin became seriously angry and punched the wall of the coffin with his fist. He clenched his teeth and exclaimed that they would even get the dead. His death was a real blow to the family. His parents will be shocked when they come to visit him, but there is no trace of their son. He imagined his father and mother weeping tearfully over his grave. He wants to show those who pull out his coffin where the crayfish hibernate, even if he dies again. The system asked the boy to calm down, because he now has the greatest combat system. She won't let him die. Ning Tianlin perked up a little and asked the system what his combat power was. The system responded with 8 points. Then the boy asked what the fighting power of these simpletons was. Ning Tianlin was very surprised that the dog had a combat power of 6 points. Didn't the system say that the average person has 5? Why is a dog stronger than an ordinary person? The rest have almost the same combat power as him, and some even have 9. It looks like he won't even destroy 3 of them, let alone the rest. And if he tries to take at least 2, he will be immediately thrown back into the coffin. Streams of sweat ran down the boy's face again. The system asked if he was scared. The boy replied that if it concerned only him, he would be afraid. Are there people who are not afraid of death? Well, if anyone dares to offend his family, he will not spare anyone. For his family, he is dead and will not come back. Ning Tianlin imagined his mother and father in front of him again. He exclaimed that now he had nothing to fear. Now he just wants to devour them all. The system replied that it was good that he was not afraid. She thinks she can help destroy them. Ning Tianlin asked how a zombie potion appeared in front of him, a trial version. The trial version of zombification lasts for half an hour. After turning into a zombie, the attack power will increase by 50 points. 3 characteristics will be increased: corpse poison, strength, and invulnerability. The boy asked the system if there was something more normal. The system replied that not yet. Meanwhile, one of the guys told his master that he was opening the coffin. Ning Tianlin replied to the system that he believed it, got ready to go out. The guys began to open the coffin lid on 3 counts. They tensed and began to pull. The boss gave the command to his dog to tear apart the corpse. The dog began to bark loudly. She did not stop barking and climbed into the open coffin. Guys with shovels watched what was happening nearby. Erzi never stopped filming everything. The earth began to fly apart. The guy with the phone in his hands was sweating with fear. Something became too anxious and restless for him. They heard a very strange noise below. Some clenched their fists, some grabbed a shovel. The guys shouted at once that he had become a zombie. One of them fell to the ground and began to back away. The man from the coffin began to growl at them and show his huge, sharp fangs. His head glowed scarlet and his eyes were bloodshot. He crawled out of the coffin and began to reach out with his hand to those who had disturbed him. The boy did not want to leave these lawless people without due punishment. Ning Tianlin began to wave his arms, which turned into paws with long claws. The boss exclaimed that he needed to run away quickly. In front of them is a living dead man. The guys started calling for help. In front of them was a terrible zombie. The boss asked me to call 110. He asked to call the police quickly, but the guys ran away in all directions. The ground began to open up before them, and nearby there was a strong explosion. Stones scattered throughout the area. The boss exclaimed that he was already here and asked not to come closer. Ning Tianlin accelerated and ran to meet them. The boy exclaimed that he could not die as it would sadden his family. He never stopped chasing a bunch of guys who dared to dishonor his grave. Its paws with long, sharp claws were approaching the bodies. The boy exclaimed that all life is a waste of food. He was already very close to his opponents. Ning Tianlin opened his mouth with sharp, long fangs. His eyes never stopped glowing with a bloody flame. And so the boy caught up with his insolent victims, the robbers of his grave. The system suddenly announced that in zombie mode there is a special skill that allows you to absorb the enemy's vitality. Ning Tianlin asked the system what it meant by absorbing life. The system explained that very soon, everything would return to normal. The boy grabbed the second opponent by the throat. He lifted him as high as possible, clutching his hand, and the guy began to dry out. It was as if he had also turned into a zombie. The eyes glowed red. Ning Tianlin looked at his hand and thought that some warm energy was flowing through his stomach. Is everything okay with him? He realized that zombies could turn life energy into strength. The boy caught up with all the other guys. They suffered the same fate as the others. The remaining people also became food for Ning Tianlin. He managed the last one, after which he stopped, closing his eyes. The system reported that in 3 minutes, everything would return to normal. Has he become possessed? Ning Tianlin was a little scared. He said that he had never felt such control over his body. He began to look at his hands with sharp, long claws. The boy exclaimed that it was time to dig holes and bury everyone. The system called him a lost man. And so the boy's recovery began. The system decided to help its owner. Ning Tianlin exclaimed that this was very cool. He asked Xingjian if he could tell who she was. The system replied that now this is not what he needs to know. But as soon as he becomes stronger, then he will know everything. Ning Tianlin said that all she does is think about strength. But how strong does he even need to become? The boy looked forward with his creepy, bloody eyes. He saw something in front of him. Ning Tianlin found himself in some kind of star space. The system advised him to look for himself. The boy began to peer into the darkness. Many stars began to shine around. He was spinning around the sky as if he was in weightlessness. The system asked him not to worry. They were just traveling and no one would harm him here. There were some huge objects around him, like robots. The boy asked what it was. He flew closer to one of the objects. Ning Tianlin began to peer, trying to understand what it was all about. He saw a man in a mask in the sky. This man created many explosions. Ning Tianlin was very surprised. He asked how a person could be so powerful. His strength must be several million. The system replied that it was only 20,000. The boy watched as that incredible man, like lightning, appeared near the planet. Ning Tianlin asked the system how aggressive this guy was. The system replied that one day he would invade the Earth, and so the activation of space began. A powerful explosion erupted all around. A bright flame illuminated everything around. The guy who was wearing a purple cloak and mask took off as high as possible, flying through the planets. People were asking for help all around. People were screaming and asking not to do this. Many exclamations were heard throughout the perimeter. Ning Tianlin was very indignant. He clenched his fists and exclaimed that this was a real massacre. It was very difficult for him to see what this unknown guy was doing to the Earth. Ning Tianlin decided that he could not allow this to happen. He promised the system to become stronger and protect the Earth. After recovery, the boy returned to his previous state. The system told the owner that this was to be expected of him. She congratulated the boy and said that his combat power had been increased from 8 to 12 points. Ning Tianlin was very pleased and said that he was developing quickly. The system explained that he had killed so many people but only earned 4 points, which was not particularly fast progress. The boy asked if he was really that slow, and what should he do now? The system explained that you need to fight your opponents and rise through your victories. All creatures are divided into different ranks. More or less points can be given. It all depends on the strength of the creature he killed. After reaching a certain number of points, he can exchange them for various types of equipment, military techniques, pills, formations, and other items. The zombie potion purchased earlier is one such item. The boy immediately exclaimed that it was just lovely. He promised to give his best. Ning Tianlin put his hands on his hips and said that he was going to become invincible. The system told Ning Tianlin that it could not give him anything for now. The boy grabbed his head and asked why. He asked the system if she could turn into someone. It feels like he's talking to air. The system replied that now he does not have enough energy points, so the last word belongs to it. She turned into some kind of hamster. When the boy looked at her strangely, she asked if he was not satisfied with her appearance. Ning Tianlin replied that he was not satisfied at all. He is not going to immediately rush to increase his combat activity. First, he needs to continue studying at school. The system asked if he would return home. The boy replied that his parents and sister had literally just returned from the funeral. He is afraid that he will not be able to explain his resurrection. Normal people would find it difficult to believe this. In any case, he is sure that no one at school was told about his death. Every student must go to school. The system asked, what about tuition fees? As far as she knows, classes will start in 10 days, and he will also be charged tuition and living fees. A total of 4,800 yuan, and this does not include living expenses, Ning Tianlin exclaimed. That he would think of something? Is it possible? The system replied that it was impossible. How can he worry about money? The boy, looking forward, began to read what the system gave him. He had a task ahead of him. Requirements to complete the training task within 24 hours. The reward for this is 1 million. Penalty for failure to comply is -10 combat ability points. Ning Tianlin exclaimed that it was hard to work for 24 hours. It would be better for him to die. The system responded that the weak will complain and the strong will get down to business. The boy said that even his father had never been so strict with him. When the system asked what he said, Ning Tianlin replied, rubbing the back of his head, that it was nothing. She said that the boy was right and she would root for him. Suddenly, a call came. The system congratulated the owner on destroying the insect, and his combat ability increased by 0.001. Another half hour passed. The system again began to notify the owner and congratulate him on the destruction of snakes, insects, and rats on the way, gained 16 combat ability points. Ning Tianlin said that even though he had improved his fighting abilities, no one would take him home anyway. How can he even earn 4,800 points in 24 hours? Now he doesn't even have enough for breakfast. The boy put his hand on his hungry stomach. He exclaimed that money would not fall from the sky on him, but suddenly he had a bill in his hands. The boy was very surprised. Did someone send him money? He asked if it was possible again. Ning Tianlin clenched his fists and the money in his hands and raised his head up. Then he began to twirl the bill in his hands and ask if it was fake. He looked at the piece of paper for a long time. When I turned it to the other side, it said, "Call the police on the 6th floor." Ning Tianlin wondered what it could be. Is there really blood written on this note? The person must be in danger, otherwise he would not have asked for help in this way. When he was a child, he played here quite often. There is only one 6-story building nearby. This man must be there. The system said that he had not yet completed his task, and there was time to worry about others. Ning Tianlin replied that he would call the police, but he did not have a phone. The system asked me not to mind my own business. Has he forgotten the cause of his death? But the boy went forward and told the system that he could not do otherwise. He only needs to determine the exact location, and only then contact the police. Most people won't help. Ning Tianlin walked forward without fear of danger. He wanted to help a person in trouble as quickly as possible. It was not for nothing that this note, with the text written in blood, ended up in his hands. Someone tried to hit him with a weapon, but the boy dodged it in time. He grabbed a long, huge rod that attacked him. When it was in the boy's hand, Ning Tianlin realized that it was a huge green snake. She began to attack him and opened her huge fanged mouth. A yellow haze came out of her mouth. Ning Tianlin caught it with one hand and squeezed it with all his might. He lifted her up and hit the ground. The system congratulated the boy on his promotion to the 5th level. His combat ability increased to 20 points. He asked the system why the snake attacked him. The system replied that this snake was poisonous. The attack on him contributed to the increase in combat abilities. Ning Tianlin asked if this was the law of the jungle. In any case, this is only a plus for him. His combat abilities have been increased to 20 points. All is not lost. He can still change something. The main entrance will bring trouble. The boy decided that he could try to climb through the window. He subconsciously asked that person to wait because he would soon save him. Ning Tianlin was already going up to the desired window. The light was on in the room, and a girl was standing in front of the window. She held her hands in front of her and asked someone to help her. A sound was heard behind her at the door. The man pushed the door with his foot and exclaimed that she had burst out. He threatened, if she dared to make one more sound, to undress her and hang her on the window. The man asked where she put the 100 yuan, and he told her to pray that her father would find the money and return everything, to the last penny. The girl was very scared and covered her mouth with both hands. Beads of sweat ran down her face. The man turned towards the exit and said that it was better for her to sit here quietly. Then the girl sat down on the floor, leaning her back against the wall under the window. She hugged her knees with her arms and fell silent. She was shaking and crying quietly. Bitter tears flowed from the girl's eyes. She did not stop wailing, asking for help. Meanwhile, Ning Tianlin rose closer and closer to her. He wanted to help a person in danger as quickly as possible. Some guy approached another and told his brother that several days had already passed and there was still no ransom. The brother replied that, after all, 100 million is not so easy to find. Another exclaimed that it was clearly stated that the money had to be given today, and how dare he resist them? He must be underestimating them. The brother clenched his fists and headed towards the exit. He told the others that they were right and suggested sending the old man a small surprise. Meanwhile, the door to the girl's room opened. She started screaming and asking them not to come near. They grabbed her by the arms and began to drag her. The girl asked them to stop. The brother explained to her that if she cooperated with them, she would avoid pain, but the girl again asked to let her go. They began to tear her clothes. The brother approached her as close as possible, but the girl asked him not to do this. She begged him to stop. Suddenly, she pushed him away with all her strength with her hand. The guy almost lost his glasses. The girl again began to scream and ask not to do this, but the guy took it with his hand again. Her blouse was completely torn. The guy shouted that it was time to punish her and now she would get a lot from him. The girl began to scream. She asked for help, but the man grabbed her face with his hand, covering her mouth. Ning Tianlin appeared at the window. He began to look inside and saw a girl on the floor who was being insulted by that man. The guy saw Ning Tianlin, gritted his teeth and asked who he was. He was very angry that he was interrupted. The boy began to jump into the window, breaking the glass. The fragments scattered around with a huge noise, falling to the floor. The guys heard the noise and ran to help their brother. They saw many fragments around and Ning Tianlin standing next to the girl. He asked how someone could mock a defenseless girl. Have they completely lost their shame? The brother exclaimed with a smile that he decided to play the hero, and I asked him if he had escaped from Marvel. Ning Tianlin asked the system if they could see her. The system explained that only he can see it. The man took out a bladed weapon and approached the boy. He asked if he wanted to die and presented a knife to his cheek. The girl asked the boy to run away quickly. She exclaimed that he was no match for them, but the boy was not going to give up. He looked menacingly into the eyes of the offender, after which, with a slight movement of his hand, he made a move on the guy and the knife flew out of his hand. He dealt with this guy very cleverly and skillfully. The sharp knife was knocked out of his hands. The opponent was much healthier than Ning Tianlin, but the boy turned out to be very strong and brave. He grabbed his opponent by the throat. Ning Tianlin raised it with his hand above the floor and then threw it down with all his strength. The boy, having dealt with him, began to move towards the next enemy. Without thinking twice, he began to take out his pistol and pulled the bolt. He exclaimed that the boy was about to die in front of everyone else. The system advised Ning Tianlin to act quickly since he had a gun. Then the boy began to dodge and took the knife and threw it towards the enemy. But the guy had already pointed his weapon towards Ning Tianlin. He wanted to shoot, but the boy was much faster and was already nearby. He grabbed his opponent's throat with one hand and the hand holding the gun with the other. He squeezed his hand on the bespectacled guy's neck harder and harder. His vertebrae were pinched, and in the end the guy's neck could not stand it. The enemy fell face down on the floor. Streams of scarlet blood flowed under his head. Ning Tianlin neutralized his opponent, leaving him lying unarmed on the floor. The boy, without even looking at the girl, asked her to go. She didn't understand what he wanted. Then Ning Tianlin repeated that she should stand behind him and not wait for a bullet or a knife to hit her too. The girl covered her chest with her hands and sighed heavily. She immediately stood up and asked the boy to be careful, so that he doesn't suddenly get hurt. Ning Tianlin replied that this would not happen and asked her to close her eyes. He explained that there would be a lot of blood here now. The girl stood behind him and then closed her eyes. She was scared and blushed slightly. Ning Tianlin clenched his fists and began to approach his opponents. He was very serious and decided to use all his powers to neutralize the others. Meanwhile, the girl did not open her eyes. She sighed heavily, listening to what was happening around. Streams of sweat ran down her face, but she did not open her eyes, after which Ning Tianlin, when he finished, asked her to open her eyes. The girl looked and saw him in front of her. The boy explained that he had decided everything and asked her to leave here quickly. She looked forward at her rescuer. The girl covered her chest with her hands again. After all, her jacket was torn. She exhaled heavily. Ning Tianlin asked the girl to change clothes first. He prepared his jacket and handed it to her. The girl thought that she was very ashamed. She had never been this close to men other than her father. Ning Tianlin turned away from her and asked if she had already changed her clothes. The girl apologized and said yes. The boy replied that in that case they should go. When they were heading towards the exit, he asked her not to turn around, as there was a lot of blood there. The girl agreed with him and they headed to the elevator to go to the 6th floor. Ning Tianlin handed the phone to the girl. He explained that he had taken it off the table so she could contact her family. And he still has things to do, so he needs to go. There is no one nearby, and she can wait outside. The girl replied that in that case she would be outside, and she remained standing, clutching her hands to herself. Ning Tianlin walked back inside the building. He decided, having not yet completed the task, to resort to other methods. He approached one of the dead guys. The system noticed that his heartbeat at the moment of hugging the girl was higher than when he rose to the 6th floor. Ning Tianlin got angry and asked what the system could possibly know about feelings. He never hugged girls, with the exception of his mother and sister. The system called the boy worthless. Meanwhile, he picked up banknotes. The cash was 800 yuan. Everything else was on cards. Ning Tianlin inquired about the universal combat ability system. Does she know the password for their cards? The system replied that it knew, but there might not be money on the cards. Therefore, you can use them to transfer funds. Ning Tianlin squeezed the cards and money in his hands, thinking about another 4,000. He thought about asking that girl to lend him money. In any case, he will return every penny. The system exclaimed that then it would be necessary to return everything to it 100-fold. Isn't it too much to ask for a loan of 400,000? The boy opened the door and headed outside. Everything around was green and the sun was shining brightly. Ning Tianlin approached the girl and asked if she had contacted her family. The girl replied that she had already called her dad and he would meet her. She exclaimed that she never thanked him for saving her, after which she thanked him and introduced herself as Lin Jiayi. Ning Tianlin looked at her for the first time, looking her up and down. Looking at the girl, he blushed slightly, and he said that there was nothing to thank him for. In fact, he also wanted to ask her for something. The girl replied that he saved her, so he could ask for whatever he wanted. She smiled sweetly at him, also blushing. The girl thought about how many people he had just killed for her, and now he suddenly became embarrassed. Ning Tianlin didn't know how to start a conversation, but looking away, he asked if she could lend him 4,000. She apparently did not expect such a direct question, and suddenly she sighed loudly. Ning Tianlin asked her for forgiveness, and he said that he thought it was too much for a student, so he asked her to forget about it. But the girl replied that there was no problem. This is less than her weekly expenses, so there really is no problem. She was even very surprised that he only needed 4,000. The girl took his hand while talking about this. He thought that if she gave him more, he would gladly accept the money. But then she suddenly clenched her hands and exclaimed that she didn't have that much money now. She promised to contact Dad and immediately began calling him. Ning Tianlin asked her to wait. He took something out of his pocket and told the girl that he found it in the apartment. It looks like she injured her finger. He handed her the patch. The girl replied that she really hurt him to leave a message. She thanked the boy again and said that she would treasure this patch. Ning Tianlin told the system that this is an ordinary patch, and there is something to be treasured here. The system asked not to ask her about this. While the guy and the girl were standing on the side of the road, a car drove up to them. A man with glasses came out with 2 bodyguards behind him. The girl exclaimed, running up to her father, that she was here. The father immediately hugged his daughter and asked if everything was okay with her. The girl replied that she was fine. She explained, pointing to the boy, that this was her savior. She was locked on the 6th floor of this building, and he broke in and killed all the kidnappers. Ning Tianlin greeted her father, and he looked at the boy very sternly and intently. Then he thanked him for saving his daughter. The man told Ning Tianlin that he could come with them. The father asked his partner to look around. His man immediately agreed and began to carry out the order. Ning Tianlin looked at this guy out of the corner of his eye. His gaze fell on the man's belt. He noticed a pistol in his belt. The guard has a pistol. Apparently he is not just rich. The man began to climb the steps to the 6th floor. Ning Tianlin addressed the girl and her father. He said that in that case it was time for him to go. Lin Jiayi turned to her father and asked him to give her 4,000. The father was surprised that it was so little and immediately handed her the money. When the girl took them, she walked up to Ning Tianlin and handed him a stack of banknotes. But the boy began to deny and said that he only needed 4,000, there was too much here. The girl's father was very surprised and thought that after saving his daughter, he could have asked for several million, but he only needed 4,000. Surely this is some kind of plan. The man's bodyguard approached him and said that there were no corpses on the 6th floor, and he also did not notice any signs of a struggle. The father was very surprised by this situation. The bodyguard suddenly pulled out a pistol and pulled the bolt with lightning speed. He pointed the gun towards Ning Tianlin and asked him to stop. The man asked who he was and why he lied about his daughter. The boy turned his head and asked what he meant. He did not expect such a turn of events. Lin Jiayi immediately grabbed her father's hand and asked him what he was talking about. After all, this boy really saved her. But the father asked the girl to close her mouth. He turned to the guy and asked if he said it was a kidnapping. Where then are the corpses and blood? There was nothing there, and let him not think that he is as gullible as a 3-year-old child. The daughter wanted to get involved again, but the father continued to tell the boy that he should behave more honestly. He told his daughter that he would deal with her later. Ning Tianlin cast a serious glance towards her father. He began to approach them and said that she did not lie. He clenched his fists, feeling very upset and angry. The bodyguard pointed the weapon in his direction and asked him to stand and not come closer. His father, looking at him, asked how he would explain all this in this case. The boy brazenly looked him in the eyes and replied that he was not obliged to report everything to him. The father became even more angry. He said that although he did not know what methods he used to deceive his daughter, he did not understand why he first asked for 100 million and then reduced it to 4,000. Either way, it doesn't matter anymore and he'll teach him a lesson. Ning Tianlin exclaimed that he was even interested in how exactly he was going to teach him a lesson. The man asked to break his arm and leg. Then he would probably understand everything and would not remain silent. The girl asked her father to stop. She tried to explain that they did not deceive him. The father asked what this scoundrel had done to her and where such a lie came from. Lin Jiayi took her father's hand and said again that she really didn't deceive him. If he does not believe that they can rise and he will see for himself. The father clenched his fists and agreed with his daughter. He said that in that case he would go upstairs. The bodyguard began to approach the boy and, asking for an apology, explained that he was only following orders. He tried to grab Ning Tianlin by the head, but the boy quickly moved aside. He was very dexterous and nimble. Ning Tianlin made the bodyguard cough up blood with one blow of his hand. He broke the guy's glasses and hit him in the head with his elbow. The boy neutralized one bodyguard. He fell face down on the ground. Ning Tianlin, after neutralizing the enemy, asked him for an apology. The second bodyguard told his partner that this guy was pretty good. Did he see his movements? How fast this guy is? The guys concluded that it would not be easy with him and that they needed to be careful. Ning Tianlin asked if anyone else wanted to receive it. He said that he would be happy to help. One of the bodyguards got very angry and asked if he wanted to die. He clenched his teeth and began to approach the boy. Meanwhile, Lin Jiayi and her father opened the door. The girl could not understand why there was nothing here. Her father told her there was nothing there. He doesn't know what this scoundrel gave her. But her deception is completely meaningless. Lin Jiayi exclaimed that she was not lying. He killed several kidnappers to save her. One of the enemies had a pistol. Suddenly, they turned around at some noise. The man asked why his people were shooting without his order. They headed towards the exit and saw the bodyguards lying on the floor. The man became seriously angry and clenched his fists. What could have happened here, and where is this brat? One of the bodyguards explained that he knocked them all down. One was so scared that he fired, but all the bullets missed him. They concluded that this guy is a real monster. Ning Tianlin walked forward along the clean, spacious alley. The system told the boy that the girl was good, but her dad was not the best. Fortunately, she has abilities that came in handy during the battle. If it weren't for the system, there probably wouldn't have been any fractures. Ning Tianlin asked the system what it would say to this. She replied that the law of the jungle, and now it has become many times stronger. The beginner's task was completed. The system asked if he wanted to receive a reward. Ning Tianlin was delighted and exclaimed that of course he would. A purple ball appeared in front of him. Bright white rays emanated from it. He got an ice blade, a centipede, and a ring of the 4th dimension. The boy smiled and said that he was still wondering what would happen to him. He said that this was all quite good. But wait a minute, what about 1 million? The system replied that they were already on his account. Ning Tianlin began to look at the monitor. On it was written the name Ning Tianlin, gender male, place of residence, Milky Way, Kui, Earth, account 1 million. The boy began to read again everything that the system gave out. He said that the address was somehow strange. The system asked if he really thought that he would always live on Earth, or he has already forgotten about the space war. The boy asked the system if it could help him get his money back. His relationship with her father did not work out, and he doesn't even know if he will be able to meet in person. The system responded that this could be done. Money was debited from his account. The system asked how he felt after that. Ning Tianlin replied with tears in his eyes that his heart hurts. He lost so many hundreds too quickly. But let him forget, in any case, he still has 600,000 left. What about attributes? The boy chose an ice blade. He pressed his finger on the monitor and a shiny ice blade appeared in his hands. Quite an unusual weapon. As soon as I picked it up, my head immediately became lighter. The system explained that these were not weapons but military equipment, and she asked me to open the attributes panel to take a look. Ning Tianlin exclaimed that all indicators increased except for agility. Looking at his indicators, the boy thought about it. If the weapons help improve his fighting ability, wouldn't he still be at a big advantage? Smiling, he scratched his chin. The system asked if he thought he would stand up the strongest wearing simple equipment. The boy replied that everything was obvious, but judging by her look, this is not at all the case. The system replied that of course not. Ning Tianlin asked why. Is there a difference between combat equipment and regular equipment? Still, combat effectiveness is growing. He thinks a real fight will better show the difference. The system snapped its finger. There has been a change in space. The boy found himself in a dark space and asked what it was. The system explained that this is a special world thanks to which he will find himself in a virtual battle, and then he will be able to experience all the difference of the above. Ning Tianlin held a sharp, heavy blade in his hands. He looked at the scorecard again. Strength 8, Agility 6, Spirit 9, Constitution 7, Combat Ability 37. The enemy was in front of him. The boy squeezed the blade as tightly as possible in his hands and pointed it towards the man. With a deft movement of his hand, he tried to plunge the weapon into his opponent. The virtual man dodged very deftly. Ning Tianlin tried to hit him numerous times, but the attempts were in vain. As a result, the virtual man knocked the weapon out of the boy's hands, and it flew off, stuck into the ground. The boy said that this guy is much cooler than the real one. The fighting power is just like his. This man is very strong. The system explained that his combat ability was only 30 points, which was much lower than his. Why don't he try out the Ice Soul attack now? An ice blade appeared in the boy's hands. A table with indicators appeared in front of him again. He began to read the indicators of this weapon. Once again, the opponent clenched his fists, waiting for Ning Tianlin to attack. The boy began to approach the man, tightly grasping the bladed weapon. He began to rush towards the enemy faster and faster. Ning Tianlin glanced at his opponent and saw his fist in front of him. The man clenched his fist in response and tried to hit the boy. Ning Tianlin skillfully dodged the man's strong fist. He tried to strike him again and again, but Ning Tianlin dodged again. The boy pulled out his blade and tried to strike with a cold weapon, but the man deftly dodged the blow. Ning Tianlin repeated his attempts more than once. This time, the boy managed to gradually deal with the enemy. He realized that the Ice Soul improves physique and agility. In fact, his reaction noticeably accelerated. The system agreed with him. This was the difference between normal equipment and combat ability equipment. Equipment that affects combat effectiveness affects its insides, and ordinary equipment only creates the appearance of strength. Combat equipment is very different from simple equipment, as it adds quite a lot of energy to the body. But if his strength is not enough, the energy will not be able to stay in his body for long and will break out. Therefore, it is better not to jump over your head. That is why you should not wear equipment that is significantly below his capabilities, since it will not bring any benefit. Ning Tianlin exclaimed that this was pretty good equipment. He decided to see what this bug would give him. The boy pressed the bug, but this parasite began to eat his finger. He grabbed Ning Tianlin's finger with his teeth. The system asked him to stay still as it was sucking his blood. The boy got angry and asked why he shouldn't move. Does he really have to endure this, or has the system decided to find a new master? The system explained that the centipede has its own peculiarity. As soon as it loses its shell, it begins to suck blood in order to continue living. And the first owner into whom she sends her fangs will increase her combat ability. Ning Tianlin replied that the bug looks much weaker than him. What kind of fighting ability is that? The system asked not to look down on it. An adult can reach several meters in length. The boy asked if she would grow up if he took her with him. The system replied that her body could change depending on his consciousness. Ning Tianlin said that let her sit in his ear, he sent this bug to his ear. The boy suddenly froze, as if listening to her. He explained that he felt as if he had something familiar in his ear. He said that he would call her honey. Now, you need to use the ring. The system explained that it was a ring of combat power. The boy put it on his finger and said that its name was too simple. A table appeared in front of him with the characteristics of this thing. Ning Tianlin said that he thought that this was some kind of storage facility. How could it enhance his fighting abilities? The system explained that the main function of the ring is to strengthen combat abilities and secondary storage. 2 pieces of combat equipment increase combat abilities by 13 points at once. Now it will be difficult to defeat him. The boy asked how big this storage facility was. The ring on his finger suddenly glowed. The storage area was approximately 5 meters. He decided that this was somehow not enough and saw some kind of dark fog in front of him. The system explained that the ring would grow along with his combat abilities, and the black fog was an uncharted space that he could comprehend in the future. When he advances to the next level, his combat ability will increase, and his area will increase by 10 meters. Ning Tianlin exclaimed that he would work hard, and now he will go to Beijing. It's not time for him to sit here. The system asked if he would return home. The boy replied that he received about 12 live wounds, and 7 days had passed since the funeral. Does she really think they will be happy to have him back? It would be better if he came back during the winter holidays. When the time comes, he will tell the legend of how, with his last breath, he was saved by a mysterious man who filled his life with meaning. But due to amnesia, his memory was restored only after 6 months. The system asked if he didn't think they would believe it or if he didn't like his family at all. Ning Tianlin replied that he was not a completely stupid person. In any case, he is confident that his family will forgive him. So he decided to do just that first. But there was a tear in the boy's eyes. Before us is a huge metal structure. Entire kilometers of this structure rose to the sky above the earth. The skies was pleasing with its blueness and purity. The sun warmed everything around. The train was rushing forward at full speed. Ning Tianlin, sitting on one of the seats of the train, sighed heavily. The system told the boy that he caught all the thieves at the station. Why then sighs? The boy replied that initially he wanted to take a comfortable place. Who would have thought that in the end, he would not have time to buy a ticket? The system was surprised whether he had never flown on an airplane. Ning Tianlin replied that he really did not fly. There is no airport in his city, so he has never tried to fly. The system chimed again and said that the owner of the greatest combat system would not live like a mere mortal. So no problem. They will sort everything out. A temporary task has appeared. There are no restrictions on completing the mission. His combat abilities will increase by 100 points, and there is a chance of obtaining an F-rank aircraft. Ning Tianlin asked the system if his combat ability increased to 100 points, would he be able to break through to level 25? And what is an F-rank aircraft? The system replied that everything was wrong and abruptly fell silent. The boy was angry that the system was not telling him anything. She laughed and replied that it would be better to look at that person. He seems to be suffering from some kind of mental illness. Ning Tianlin glanced at the man sitting opposite him, gnawing on some chicken thigh. Suddenly, a girl with a suitcase ran over the boy's leg. He got angry and asked her to watch where he was going. As soon as she dared to step on his foot, it was a girl with a suitcase. She glanced at the guy and asked why he was so angry. The guy didn't answer. Looking at the girl, beads of sweat flowed down his face. Ning Tianlin also looked at the girl and thought that she seemed not so simple. He became quite interested. Ning Tianlin understood everything at first sight. He decided that she would now sit not far from them. The boy continued to watch the girl. The girl's heels appeared in front of him. She walked slowly and confidently. She approached the guy with mental disorders and, taking him by the shoulder, asked him to stand up, indicating to him that this was her place. The guy asked if she was blind. Doesn't he really see what he's eating here? But the girl took him by the hand with a sharp movement. The guy continued to eat and asked her to move away, but the girl began to perform some kind of technique. She pressed her thumb against the bone of her arm. The guy immediately screamed in pain and exclaimed that his arm was broken. He asked the girl to let him go. Ning Tianlin saw that the guy had a broken bone. There's definitely something wrong with this girl. After she broke his bone, with a deft movement of her hand, she threw the guy over her, after which he flew down with a roar, and the girl exclaimed for him to let her go and asked him to get out of here. Ning Tianlin, watching from the side, could not understand whether she was some kind of demon. No wonder she's so arrogant. Even men are scattered once or twice. The boy thought about the fact that she had smeared him with her powers. He asked the system what its combat power was. The system replied that it was approximately 21 points. And he has 24, I wonder how she practices. While the boy was looking in her direction, the girl glanced at him in response. At this time, the man whom she had knocked to the floor began to run up to her. He got angry and asked how dare she do this to him. The guy was already next to the girl when she hit him in the side with one movement of her hand. The elbow hit the fat man directly in the stomach, and he flew back to the floor. Ning Tianlin continued to watch what was happening, more and more surprised. What's going on this train? And where does this girl get such strength? The fat guy flew away, smashing the neighboring table with his body. Did she really kill him? But the guy began to call the conductor for help. The girl continued to get tired and came closer to the guy. He was lying on the table, broken into pieces. The girl leaned over to this guy's pocket and began to take out some piece of paper from it. She raised this document in front of her and, after reading it, she placed her foot on the guy's stomach. The girl told the fat man that she remembered his name and address. She asked him not to dare to talk too much, otherwise his whole family would die. The girl heard someone's steps and some noise. Someone asked to make way and asked what was the matter. The conductor approached the guy and asked what happened. Did the girl really hit him? The guy replied that no, everything was fine, and explained that it was he himself who fell. Then the conductor said that since nothing had happened, it was necessary to return to their seats. Ning Tianlin thought that everyone present here was in complete shock. Her energy is much more powerful than his, and he killed about 11 people. She looks less than 20 years old. Where does her bloodthirstiness come from? She also said about the murder of an entire family. It's just terrible. He first watched the girl, then abruptly turned away and closed his eyes. She didn't stop staring at the boy. The system asked why he closed his eyes. After all, she is still weaker than him. Ning Tianlin replied, the system doesn't understand anything at all. Her abilities are better than some real masters, and she's got plenty of strength. Maybe she's from a whole organization of killers. One-on-one, he can deal with it, but he will no longer be able to overcome the forces behind it. The strength of the Han Dynasty. The system told the boy that the journey would be long and offered to play. Ning Tianlin replied that he would never play with that girl. The system promised to add more energy to him for victory, then the boy immediately agreed. After all, if he receives a reward, he will be able to double his energy. It will also increase the level, maybe by as much as 2. The boy glanced at the girl's suitcase. He wondered what might be in her suitcase. The girl looked at Ning Tianlin with a strange look. Her pupils glowed with a blue transparent light. Ning Tianlin noticed that the girl kept the suitcase near her all the time. It seemed like there was something valuable in it. He couldn't stop thinking about it. The boy's eyes lit up sharply. The girl continued to sit with her arms crossed over her chest, and the cap covered her face. Ning Tianlin, sitting opposite, did not take his eyes off the suitcase. He tried to understand, searching every millimeter with his eyes. And then he noticed one little thing. Taking a closer look, he saw that short black strands were sticking out of it. Apparently, they may belong to a man. Ning Tianlin couldn't stop racking his brain. Suddenly, he sniffed, and felt that from there he smelled blood and a corpse. He decided that there was definitely a man in this suitcase, most likely his head. The system sent an alert again. She said that the boy had guessed right and would receive the card within an hour. Entity card 20 appeared on the monitor in front of him. Ning Tianlin was very happy and laughed. He exclaimed that he had received a new treasure. Suddenly, the girl sitting opposite him turned to him. She warned that if he looked at her again, she would tear out his eyes. The boy thought that she was so young and she was already killing people. Well, what kind of girl is she? He crossed his arms and looked her straight in the eyes again. She was like the most beautiful iceberg. He replied to the girl that it was a pretty head and he couldn't take his eyes off her. The girl immediately got scared. Did he really find out what was in her suitcase? It can't be because no one saw or touched it. Then she replied that the head was truly wonderful, and she asked if he wanted to have some fun. Ning Tianlin looked back at her and asked what she was talking about. Then the girl stood up and grabbed the knife that she was hiding behind her back. The boy looked carefully at her hand and decided that she wanted to attack him. The system explained that its strength was lower so that he would win. Ning Tianlin said that in fact she reminds him of the bandits who dug up his grave. Besides, it was his own fault for making her angry. The girl decided not to attack him right away. She asked the boy how he found out about this. Ning Tianlin replied that he said this to complete the task. Will she believe him? The girl stood up and looked closely at the boy. Unexpectedly, the conductor announced to the passengers that 2 tickets for soft seats had become available at the ticket office. If someone wants to change their seat, they must contact the person on duty. They listened to the conductor, after which the boy stood up and began to say goodbye to the girl. He showed her an obscene gesture as he left. Ning Tianlin walked to the duty officer's room. He knocked and explained that he had come to change the ticket. The attendant replied that he had arrived quickly. The boy explained that he had simply never sat there, so he hurried. The attendant told Ning Tianlin that he had already changed his ticket and wished him a pleasant trip. A girl came up behind him. She turned to the attendant and said that she wanted to change her ticket. The girl held out the ticket, but someone suddenly put his hand on it. It was the girl who was sitting opposite Ning Tianlin. She said, without removing her hand from the ticket, that this place would be hers. She explained that she needed a seat next to the guy who had just changed his ticket. Ning Tianlin decided that he had killed 2 birds with 1 stone. Not only will he be able to lie down, but he will also be able to get rid of the girl. He decided that he was truly lucky. But the system asked if he was really lucky. The handle moved, the boy began to open the door and looked inside. Beads of sweat ran down his face and his gaze changed dramatically. Indeed, there was some kind of not very pleasant atmosphere there. A dark haze enveloped everything around. She enveloped the entire room like a snake. He thought that he had literally just escaped from the enemy's lair and found himself in the same one. The boy moved his eyebrows close to his nose. He thought that in any case he had nothing to fear anymore. And he began to move forward without looking back. He saw only 4 beds in front of him, but only 2 were occupied. Ning Tianlin felt that he could only hear the heartbeat from 1 person here. The boy was a little wary, and finally he reached his bed. Ning Tianlin immediately fell on top of her. Someone told him that he was playing too badly. An old man came up and asked the young man, how about a little game? The boy thought that he had finally been caught. The old man began to say that his daughter was sleeping upstairs, and he thought that she was too bored. He invited the boy to play with her. She has the game console with her. He can take it. Otherwise, he doesn't understand anything about it at all. Ning Tianlin immediately cheered up and agreed. He exclaimed that he loved games. The boy thought that, judging by his feelings, there was only 1 living person here. But corpses cannot sit. He saw a girl in front of him sitting on the top shelf. But she cannot be a corpse, because she sat down and the body does not look like it is decomposing. The girl's eyes suddenly lit up with a bright, bloody light. She looked ahead and then turned towards the boy. It was as if she had scanned him with her bloody vision. Ning Tianlin thought that he even felt sleepy. It looks like the old man is controlling the girl's corpse to put him to sleep. The boy's eyes went blank and he fell face down. Meanwhile, the old man approached him from behind, his eyes also glowing with a red bloody light. The old man crept up to him and told the young man that he didn't have to worry about anything anymore. This old man had a gloomy, malicious smile on his face. He said that very soon the soul would be removed from his body, and if everything works out, he will be able to save the master's granddaughter. When the time comes, he will become very rich and influential. Ning Tianlin continued to lie in a deep sleep. Suddenly, someone turned on the light as they entered the room. The old man didn't expect anyone to appear in front of him. He covered his face with his hand. He wondered who it could be. The old man apparently did not want anyone else to see his face. A girl appeared on the threshold, sitting opposite Ning Tianlin. She asked what he meant by task. The old man did not remove his hand from his face and asked the girl to turn off the light. He explained this by saying that he was tired and really wanted to sleep. She approached the boy and said that she knew that he was only pretending to be asleep. She asked him to tell me what kind of task this was, and if he doesn't tell, she will kill him. The old man thought that she should not be allowed near him. Will become another victim. Once he kills her, everything he needs will be collected. But the girl was persistent and came as close to the boy as possible. She asked him to speak immediately, but the old man blocked her way with his hand. He asked if she was his fiancée, and he asked not to be so angry. He was very tired, so he decided to take a nap. The girl looked into the old man's eyes and asked him not to fool her. She realized that something was wrong with this old man. The old man asked the lady not to be so angry. He pointed his bloody pupil at her and began to hypnotize her. He wanted the girl to fall asleep too. She looked intently at him and abruptly closed her eyes. The girl realized that she had come under the influence of this old man. He clearly uses some kind of magic or other supernatural powers. She bent over a little and began to rub her eyes. The girl tried with all her might to fight sleep, but nothing worked. She fell sharply to the floor, also falling into hibernation. The old man said that he didn't want to bother with young people. They were all like little children. He took out some huge red ball and exclaimed that it was time to immerse her soul in his ball. But he thought about it and looked at the light bulb in the room. The old man decided to first get rid of the excess light. He doesn't want anything to disturb him. The man placed his unusual ball near Ning Tianlin and walked towards the switch. He quickly walked up to it and pressed the button. Meanwhile, Ning Tianlin took the ball that the old man had left near him and addressed the old man. He asked why he liked to sit with the lights off so much. The man was very surprised and asked the boy how he woke up. Ning Tianlin replied that he just wanted to ask him how he managed to put him to sleep. The old man froze, seriously frightened. He realized that the boy had somehow figured him out, and he asked him what he was going to do with his ball. Ning Tianlin took it in his hands and said that it was lying on his bed. He asked me to tell him what kind of thing this was. The old man, looking at him with a contemptuous look, replied that this was not something he should know about. He asked the boy to put the ball back, but Ning Tianlin replied that he would refuse. He doesn't need this. He just wants to find out if he's hiding a monster somewhere that can hypnotize people. The boy pulled his hand towards his bag, but the old man began to run to him and asked him not to touch him. Ning Tianlin lifted the bag up and began to untie it. He wondered what was inside. When he opened the bag, several books, some kind of pipe, and another object flew out. The boy grabbed one of the books in his hand. Combat ability is only 13 points, 8 of which are given by his soul. Does he really think he can fight back? The system came back online. She congratulated the gentleman on receiving the prize. He has access to soul control. The system asked if he wanted to exchange the skill for 10 points. The boy replied that he didn't want to yet. He did not let go of the ball in the book. He said that as soon as he took this thing, it immediately reminded him of a magical weapon. He asked the system if this was it. The system replied that it was so. Ning Tianlin said that this is an excellent starting point for him. Do you need something even more? He asked the system how many points he had and how many there would be when he opened the exchange room. The system replied that he would have 0 points. Ning Tianlin did not expect such an answer. After all, he killed 11 people, stepped on so many animals. He even reached level 6. But why does he still have 0 points? The system replied that he spent all the points on his own effort. Ning Tianlin exclaimed. Okay then, there is also an increase in level which also requires points. It turns out that in the future he wanted to transform energy. The boy asked the old man what exactly. The old man sat clutching his back. Ning Tianlin gave him a disdainful look. The old man asked to give him his things. The boy asked if he thought he would obey him. And he called him a terrible little man. And why should he just give in to it? The old man asked the boy not to make him angry. He clenched his teeth and looked at him with an angry gaze. But Ning Tianlin was a good guy. He wasn't going to give up. He grabbed the man by the chest with one hand and asked what he wanted to do with him. The old man began to sweat but did nothing in response. The boy exclaimed that if he moved, he would finish him off immediately. The man felt a very powerful energy emanating from the guy. He realized that he seemed to have wandered somewhere in the wrong place. Ning Tianlin asked him to wait and asked if he had anything else interesting. Then the old man asked what he was talking about. The man asked the boy not to move. Ning Tianlin pointed to the girl lying on the floor in a deep sleep. He said that he had an inhuman attitude and asked if it seemed so to him. And then a few minutes passed. The boy held the money in his hands and said that there was nothing more. He will take several thousand as moral compensation. Ning Tianlin asked the old man if he had any objection, but the old man replied that there was no objection. And he thought to himself that the guy dared to mock him. Just let him wait until they arrive. Then he will laugh. The master would never let him go alive. And here in front of us is a huge, bright building. It was a sunny, bright day outside. There were no signs of trouble. A light breeze blew the curtain into someone's room. Someone asked if they had contacted him. The guy who was standing near the bed on which the girl was lying replied that no, the phone was not available. Then the man asked if he really wanted to break the contract. If he can't save his granddaughter's life, then he's done. The guy replied that apparently he was now on the train. The man asked to send someone to meet him and to watch carefully so that they would not miss him under any circumstances. The girl was lying on the bed with her eyes closed. Her face was calm and her hands were folded on her stomach. Meanwhile, the train continued to move at incredible speed. The boy rejected the call on the phone. He squeezed it tightly in his hand, and he asked the old man if it was all about his wife. The old man replied that of course it was in her and now it was the end. He told Ning Tianlin that it was not too late to call back, and he stared at him intently. He leaned forward a little towards the boy, but he asked him not to move, otherwise he would kill him. The old man exclaimed that he had already taken everything and asked what else he needed. He asked the guy to at least let him answer the phone. Ning Tianlin said that until he leaves here, he will not receive anything. And even if he doesn't think that he can contact his accomplice, the boy noticed that the train was very fast and asked why not wake up the girl. The old man advised to pat his girlfriend on the cheek, after which she will wake up. Ning Tianlin exclaimed that he would pat him on the cheek now. He raised his hand above the old man's head. But the old man asked him to calm down. She will wake up in 10 hours. If he is in a hurry, then let him wet the towel and put it on her forehead. Then she will come to her senses in 10 minutes. Ning Tianlin thought that this girl was a ruthless person who dared to look down on him, and now he also has to help her. In any case, she will wake up someday. Ning Tianlin realized that he would not go out soon, and I decided that I needed to figure out whether these items could be exchanged for points. The boy took the old man's huge burgundy ball in his hand. He decided that these were disgusting things, and he asked the system whether this thing connects their world with the other world. The system replied that it was connecting, but he will have to wait until his combat abilities increase to the required level. The boy did not let go of this unusual luminous ball. He looked at it more closely and realized that he could see what was inside the ball. His eyes focused on him. The boy changed his gaze, as if he noticed something inside. There was like some kind of darkness, among which there were fiery, bright points. These points were like planets. In one of them, he saw a girl, and I thought, isn't this the dead girl? Ning Tianlin recoiled from this ball and asked the old man who he was and what this thing was. Are these really the souls of people? The old man explained that he accidentally bought this ball. There were already 3 spots on it. Are souls really sealed there? The boy thought that it seemed his guesses were correct, but there is no use asking him. He decided that he would find the answer only in the Book of Soul Control. Ning Tianlin took the book in his hands and began to slowly open it. According to the book, soul control is to dispose of the soul at your own discretion. It turns out that he is invincible for this book. When the boy opened the book, he asked himself questions. He was very curious about what was in it. What are these symbols? The boy tried to figure it out, but he didn't understand anything about them. The system explained that the book was written in Xiao Hao's language, so he could not understand it. But the system can help him, Ning Tianlin asked Hao. The system began to explain that the first option was to spend 10 points to translate the text into simplified Chinese. But whether he can understand the content will depend only on his knowledge of literature. Ning Tianlin immediately changed his face upon hearing the first option. The system continued, explaining that the second option was to spend 50 points to translate the text into simplified Chinese and see the notes on the techniques. The third option is to spend 500 points to bring into the mind all the information from the book Soul Control, so he will fully understand it. The boy immediately exclaimed, without even thinking, that he was choosing the third option. But isn't it too expensive? After all, a book can be translated for only 10 points, but she requires 500 for knowledge from it. Would she make a discount? The system replied that there were countless treasures here. Has he ever seen a billionaire collect garbage? The boy replied that, be that as it may, it is still a magical weapon. It seems to him that the old man values him. The system explained that the reason for such a high price is also that he will be able to immediately use the knowledge gained. You won't have to wait. But when he needs magic weapons again, the exchange price will be higher. Ning Tianlin asked the system if it really took him for an idiot. The system responded that the purpose of his actions was to enable him to increase his combat abilities and improve the world. The boy exclaimed that she was right and he needed to improve his fighting abilities. Even though he doesn't feel tired, it's still there. So he needs to take a nap. The old man asked the boy what he was going to do. Ning Tianlin replied that he wanted to sleep. Does he think that he will let him go so easily? The old man looked at the boy, not understanding what he was going to do. Ning Tianlin hit the old man on the head with his palm. Then he apologized and said that he was in the wrong place. And he promised that next time he would definitely succeed. The old man grew a huge lump and was in great pain. The man fell to his knees in pain and grabbed his head. The boy exclaimed that he almost succeeded. The old man fell to the floor, spewing foam from his mouth. But his head had many red bumps. The boy decided that it looked like he would have to better understand this art and lay down to rest. Ning Tianlin said that the killer was already on the train. With him, his life began to sparkle with bright colors. He wished the system good night. The conductor announced to the distinguished passengers that the train was about to arrive in Jinbei. He asked to get ready and not to forget your hand luggage. The boy realized that he had been sleeping for a very long time. He was asked to keep the tickets with him. According to the new rules, he must show them when leaving. The boy asked to give him half a minute and said that he would be ready soon. He asked the system to restore order here. The system immediately met halfway and agreed. Ning Tianlin took the ticket in his hand and handed it to the conductor. His look was very surprised. The boy couldn't understand where so many people came from. And why are all these people wearing black? Apparently, they are together with the old man. Maybe the caller was an important person. Ning Tianlin thought that it was time for him to quickly get away from here. One of the guys in black blocked his way. He was wearing black sunglasses. The boy stood up to throw these guys around, and they scattered in all directions, falling to the floor. One of them covered himself with his hand and tried to get up to strike the enemy, but the boy jumped and blocked the blow. Sharp glass scattered around. The system asked the gentleman to be calm, but he couldn't do it. Even though he had killed a lot of people in recent days, they were the bad guys. But he is not going to kill any flight attendants and other employees. They are not guilty of anything. If he starts killing everyone indiscriminately, how will he be different from those bastards? In that case, how will he use the 1-hour card? Will he really run to look for bad people all over the city? The boy replied that he wouldn't go because this is the capital and they monitor security so well. He has better ideas. He will kill fish to increase his fighting abilities. The man told the boy that only 5 yuan per carp, the price was already reduced. But his question about whether the fish is alive is a little strange. Ning Tianlin said that he understood, but this was important to him. Then the man took the boy to the warehouse. He explained that his whole family fishes. The boy thought that as long as he had money, he could buy a lot of fish, but killing fish accumulates points too slowly. Therefore, there is no need to use a doubling card. I would like to open an exchange shop as soon as possible and see what useful things will be in it. Ning Tianlin told the man that he needed about 30,000 fish for the day, and only 100,000 fish. Only he asks him not to interfere with him in any way. They decided on that, after which the boy began to cut the fish into pieces. Ning Tianlin said that he kills a fish in a second, but now half an hour has already passed. He asked the system how many points he received. The system replied that it was 3. The boy was very surprised why there were so few points. A person has about 1 energy point, and in half an hour he killed 1,800 carp, which can be estimated as 3 people. Accordingly, he received 3 energy points for them, which is incomprehensible. Ning Tianlin exclaimed that the fish was alive. If he kills them all, he will receive only 200 points. This is not even half enough to master the soul control technique. He hopes that today he will still be able to escape somehow. The boy earned 34 points. A little more time passed and he earned 62 points, then 95 points, 96 points, and with each fish more and more accumulated, but very slowly and little. The boy said that the owner of the stall gave away 50,000 fish today, but the exchange shop has not opened and the fish is already running out. The system asked why he was in such a hurry to open it. Does he really think that the shop will never open again? The boy replied that school would begin in 3 days, so he was in a hurry. But he is going to continue killing fish. Unexpectedly, the system congratulated the gentleman on accumulating 100 points. She asked if he wanted to open an exchange shop. The boy immediately agreed. A table appeared in front of him. He asked if there was this exchange shop. Is it divided into 9 platforms? He began to look at the table. When I looked at the different options, I asked about the sword against the background of blue lightning. He said that in front of him were weapons, clothes, shoes, and food. He wants to see the weapon. The boy walked up to the monitor and pressed his finger on the screen, selecting a weapon. He began to think about what to choose, knife, pistol, spear, or something else. In front of him was a whole arsenal. In addition to all that was said, a club, an axe, a bow, and many other interesting things. Ning Tianlin thought about why there were so many sections: item level, magic weapon, spiritual weapon. Magic weapons are also divided into 5 categories. Isn't there too many levels of choice? He decided to look at the inferior quality first. He doesn't know if he even has enough glasses for him and pointed his finger. The weapon was called the demonic wolf feng and was of high quality. Type of magical weapon: He began to read its characteristics and thought to himself, adds 95 combat ability points, but he needs level 15, and he only has level 6 so far. But the required number of points for exchange is 950. The boy was very surprised. This is an inferior magical weapon. Why is it so expensive? He thought it would cost 10 points. He exclaimed that he would no longer rely on her. It seems to him that he will never be able to earn even the lowest quality, let alone the average and the highest. After opening the exchange shop, he will have access to additional tasks that will help him gain points as soon as possible. The boy reached out to the monitor screen and clicked on the special quality. A huge sword glowing with golden light appeared in front of him. It contained bright, colorful stones. Ning Tianlin was very surprised and exclaimed that it was simply incredible beauty. When he looked at the zeros, he said that there were too many zeros to exchange. He decided to look at the other sections later. Apparently, you will have to shell out a considerable amount in order to exchange it for something worthwhile. At least he will know what he is working for. In the meantime, he will continue to kill fish to accumulate points. And then the next day came. As usual, the sun was shining in the sky and the weather did not predict rain. Some girl knocked on the door and asked the gentleman if it was possible to buy fish here. Ning Tianlin did not have time to turn around, but answered the girl that fish is not for sale here. But suddenly he paused and thought, where does such a familiar voice come from? The girl looked at the guy and recognized him. She walked towards Ning Tianlin. The boy turned around and recognized this girl. He asked why she was here. Then the girl asked if he was angry because of his father. She began to explain to him, and she said that her father decided that they and him were deceivers and asked, what about those people? Why did he transfer 4,000 to her? They looked at each other, not understanding why this happened. The girl leaned towards the boy and he stopped her. Ning Tianlin asked the system if it had erased all her memories. How could she find this place? The system explained that this was a mere coincidence. She came for the fish. The boy replied that there were too many coincidences and he couldn't stay here anymore. He asked how many points he had. He asked to exchange energy for money and transfer it to his account. He laughed and called himself a multimillionaire. The boy asked the system to cleanse his body, otherwise he still needs to go to school. The system agreed, but asked to pay 10 energy points for it. Ning Tianlin replied that she was doing so many people somewhere and asking for so many points just because of simple cleaning of clothes. The system responded that in the first case it was responsible for ensuring his safety, and in the second, it acted at his request. The difference in this is huge. Then the boy asked to forget and said that he would just take a shower and don't forget to transfer him 10,000. After which, on the street, a man near the entrance told Ning Tianlin that he should not be allowed in like this. Then the boy handed him a wad of money and asked him to buy him a set of casual clothes, shoes and socks, and keep the rest for himself. The man at the entrance immediately agreed and took the money, after which he asked him to go through. Meanwhile, in the jacuzzi, the men said that they saw such a beauty yesterday, the boss would probably like her. The boss praised his employee and asked him to show it to him later. They glanced at the guy and asked what he forgot here, after which they began to drive him away. One of the guys called him a beggar and asked how he dared to come here. He exclaimed that the boy was about to dirty all the water. Ning Tianlin replied that in this case, let them try to kick him out. He called the guys trash. Then one of them clenched his strong fist and asked if he wanted to die. His fist came close to the boy's face, but Ning Tianlin looked at him calmly. With a sharp blow of his knee, he hit the man in the intimate area. He winced in pain. Then another guy began to approach him and exclaimed that he was about to get it. This guy was stopped by another and, with a chuckle, asked the guys to disperse and let him resolve everything. He exclaimed that the youth had somehow completely relaxed. His eyes glowed with an eerie look. He said that he needed to show him what higher people were capable of and began to clench his fists as hard as possible. The man exclaimed that since the boy provoked them, he should not expect mercy. He began to attack the boy, but he fought off his hand with a sharp movement. The man began to fly back and fell, hitting his face on the floor. The boy asked who was provoking whom else here. The guys started calling their boss. They immediately ran towards him, jumping over the side of the pool. The system exclaimed that they were strong. Ning Tianlin replied that he knew and he only used 60% of his power. Any ordinary person would have fallen off his feet, but apparently everything is in order. The guy exclaimed, getting up from the floor, that he had really pissed him off. He clenched his fist and held it out in front of him. His fist glowed with some kind of blue bright light. The boy was surprised, but he skillfully dodged the guy's powerful blow. The enemy looked at him, also surprised by his incredible power and energy. The guy clenched both his fists and glowed with a soft blue haze. He wanted to kill the guy, but could not understand how this could happen. He looked at him and asked how the boy managed to evade all his attacks. Ning Tianlin called him a scoundrel and replied that this was a bathhouse. He explained to the enemy that the steam in the bathhouse betrayed all his movements, after which the boy raised his fist and jumped over his opponent. He asked to look at his fist and, accelerating, hit him as hard as he could on the head. When the guy fell to the floor, Ning Tianlin asked if he was scared. He knows nothing about retribution. Meanwhile, a girl who was familiar to Ning Tianlin was sitting tied up on a chair. She lowered her head down and closed her eyes. There were two men next to her. The man told the gentleman that after interrogation, it turned out that she had nothing to do with the guy who escaped from the train. The sir listened carefully to his subordinate. He replied that it was hard to go against the sky, but for the sake of his granddaughter's recovery, he is ready to do anything. He ordered his men to continue the search. The girl was sitting on a chair, still tied up. Her gaze was directed ahead. She narrowed her eyes and exclaimed that it was all because of him. She decided that as soon as she got there, she would immediately finish him off, so that there would be no wet spot left from him. Meanwhile, the guy stood with his back to the wall, after which he turned and began to look ahead. On his jacket was the number 657. Some girl came out the door and shouted that they wanted to kill her. She asked for help. Ning Tianlin saw Shu Yinggu in front of him. He thought it was his classmate. Does she really work here as a masseuse? Some guy called her names and asked why she was yelling or thinking that anyone cared about her. Some girl said that number 36 always pretends to be innocent. What's wrong with her? She does the same thing as them, so why pretend to be a martyr? The boy thought that Shu Yina helped him a lot in high school, so he shouldn't leave her here. And the boy immediately rushed to the girl's aid. He threw the guy aside and he fell, hitting his head on the floor. Ning Tianlin approached his classmate and asked if she was okay. The girl was sitting on her knees and was very surprised when she saw her classmate in front of her. Shu Yina hugged the boy and asked him to help her. She explained that she didn't want to be here. Then Ning Tianlin replied that he would take her out of here now. The girl explained that her clothes were in the restroom and she wanted to change them. When the boy took the girl out into the corridor, a security guard approached them. He realized that they had made this noise here. Ning Tianlin asked him to get out. The guard stared at the boy with a serious look. Streams of sweat ran down his face. Ning Tianlin took the girl by the hand and asked her to go change clothes. He asked her not to worry and promised to protect her. Suddenly, the guy he hit appeared and asked how he dared attack him. He promised to give him back right away. The rest of the guys came running and asked who dared to offend their brother. Ning Tianlin managed to dodge their blows and, like lightning, hastened to reciprocate. One of the guys he had already sent flying looked at him with a questioning look. But while he was looking at him, the boy had already sent him flying. His boys were very surprised and crowded around him. They opened their mouths. One of them exclaimed that he fought well. He should have been taught a lesson long ago. Ning Tianlin said that he gives them the right to choose. Option 1 is that they will get a beating from him. But before he had time to voice the second option, one of the guys exclaimed that he was choosing the second one. Ning Tianlin replied that the second option is that they scoundrels will calm down in these lands. The boy pointed his sword at them. One of the guys exclaimed that he wanted to kill them and thought it was some kind of joke. The guy said that he probably looked funny in their eyes. The boys gathered around. One of them led them forward so that they attacked together. No one has yet withstood their blows. They clenched their jaws and strong fists and decided to attack their opponent. They wanted to avenge their brother and rushed forward screaming. The boys scattered everyone on the floor. At this time, his classmate came up and told him that she had already changed her clothes. Ning Tianlin took the girl by the arm and asked her to go with him. She turned towards those guys. She saw them scattered on the floor and asked if everything was okay. The boy replied that everything was fine. At this time, a security guard approached and wanted to give the gentleman his things and money. But Ning Tianlin replied that he could keep them. The man thanked the gentleman and said that he was very grateful to him. The girl asked if he gave him the money for a tip. He saw what was happening here, so it's better not to waste money like that, Ning Tianlin asked. Not to worry about money. It seems they went to the same university and he might let her down. Shu Yina asked not to do this. She would not be able to explain the damage on her body. She said that she would stay at a hotel, and as soon as the bruises subsided, she would return to study. The boy agreed and said that the driver would now take them to a 5-star hotel. They were already approaching a huge, tall building. The boy held the girl by the waist. He booked the presidential suite for 1 year. They were asked to wait a minute. The girl asked why they came here. We could have found a cheaper place. The boy asked her not to worry and said that everything was fine. Shu Yina asked where he got so much money. Meanwhile, the person at the reception told the guys that the elevator was on the left. The girl wished them a good rest. The boy immediately thanked her and they headed to the elevator. Shu Yinga was very surprised that he spent more than 3 million. Did he really win the lottery? Ning Tianlin replied that she had almost guessed right. He began to yawn and told the girl that he had not slept for 3 days, so he would like to rest a little. He asked her to order whatever she wanted, and then he will make the payment. The girl exclaimed that if it weren't for her, he would have been calmly resting at home. She said that if he didn't mind, she could give him a massage. She explained that she has only been studying for 2 months, but the results are already there. Ning Tianlin agreed and said that then he needed top service. The girl replied that she could not guarantee this, but it can be very comfortable. Ning Tianlin lay on the bed with his mouth open. His cheeks turned red from the high. The girl asked if it was hard for him and said that she could do it weaker. Ning Tianlin replied that it was just right. The system intervened and asked why he didn't kill those bandits. Ning Tianlin replied that this is a public place, so you need to be more careful. It would be great if there was a license to kill. And there are a lot of good things in the exchange shop. If he could make an exchange, it would be much more convenient. How I want to finish off her offenders. She comes from a good family. In high school, she was his classmate and always shared food with him. But why did she end up in a place like this? Financial difficulties, probably. If so, then he can help her. The girl asked the boy to turn over so that she could stretch the other side. As the boy turned over, she continued to massage him. The boy became a little embarrassed. The classmate turned her head away and became a little embarrassed. She said that she needed to take a shower. Ning Tianlin began to pull his t-shirt over his pants and continued to blush. The system asked if his size really scared this girl. The boy asked her to shut up. The system explained that it thought they were on good terms. Why did she get angry then? Ning Tianlin replied that she should think more about it. You need to leave her here and leave. The system exclaimed that people are very problematic. The girl explained to the boy that he would spend the night at the club and return to study in the morning. One of the guys who was beaten by Ning Tianlin showed the boy on the monitor to his brother. He explained that this guy beat them in the bathhouse. The man laughed and was surprised that he himself had come. He was asked if there were any pills. The guy asked how much he needed. The man explained that he is a cultivator, so the dose needed is 10 times more than for an ordinary person. Those around him realized that Mr. Lin was in a good mood today. He asked everyone to give them a glass. The girl brought a glass of drink to the boy on a tray. She explained that the owner had sent him a gift. Ning Tianlin immediately thanked the girl. Meanwhile, the guy looked at the monitor and said that the new wheels contain hallucinogens. He will soon go crazy. The glass jumped out of the boy's hands. It broke into small pieces. Ning Tianlin grabbed his head with his hands. He couldn't understand what was wrong and why he was dizzy. The system looked at the boy with its eyebrows knitted towards its nose. Ning Tianlin continued to hold his head with his hand. Streams of sweat ran down his cheeks. He looked somewhere ahead, thoughtful. He did not remove his hands from his head. He tried to understand what was happening. The boy's eyes completely changed. A man approached him and asked what he was doing. Ning Tianlin began to rise from his desk. He was on the verge of his anger. Someone shouted that there had been a murder. There is a sick killer here. Ning Tianlin glanced to the side and exclaimed that this was simply wonderful. There are a lot of fish here. People who wished him harm were lying on the floor. The boy was holding his weapon in his hands. He didn't let go of it. When the boy woke up, he could not understand whether he had really killed all these people. The system congratulated him for this. In 18 minutes, he killed 382 people and received 427 points. Ning Tianlin replied to the system that he killed fish and not people. The system explained that it so happened that these bandits harbored a grudge against him. Most likely, they slipped something into his drink. And if not for his inner ruthlessness and thirst for blood, they would have been alive. Ning Tianlin replied that he lost his mind because of the drug. The system asked why it had to convince him. In fact, she deliberately closed all the doors and windows. I wanted him to get as many points as possible, but for now it's better for him not to shine. He already understands what kind of character he has. That is why it will not force you to rush into battle and kill people left and right. But he must be ready to protect his family at any moment. So, showing composure is also important. Ning Tianlin told the system that it was right, but the next time, during a similar poisoning, he asked to wake him up. He explained to the system that he wanted to always be sane, and he looked at the guy lying on the floor. He asked the system if it was absorbing it. The system replied that if he allowed him to eat the corpses, his fighting ability would increase. The boy exclaimed that it was very difficult to watch. Juices are released in his mouth. These juices can soften any food. He asked to give him time to take care of everything. And then a few minutes passed. There was an insect lying in the boy's arms. Ning Tianlin said that it looks like the baby has eaten to his fill. The system replied that he had 4 legs, and accordingly his combat abilities increased to 40 points. The boy asked what the system meant, that he could merge with it. The system replied that the energy itself would begin to flow into his body. He can spend about 300 points on improvement and use the rest in a completely different direction. She congratulated the boy on his promotion to level 13. Classes start tomorrow. The holidays are over. The man told the chief that according to the report, all the people in the nightclub disappeared within one night. At this time, no evidence has been found at the scene and no one has been photographed on surveillance cameras. There are too many coincidences this time. That scoundrel must have tried again. The man moved his eyebrows to his nose and gave the command to his men to search further. He asked them to turn over the whole earth, but they would certainly find him. In front of us is a wooden chair with a backrest. There was a rope lying on this chair. The guy told his friend that he wanted to go play with him tonight. He finally graduated from high school and now no one cares what he does at night. The boy agreed with his friend. He thought that this roommate was very good, and the atmosphere in the school was not bad. Enjoy student life while increasing your combat power, and when the holidays begin, he will return to his parents. Suddenly, someone called him by name. The boy heard Lin Jiayi's voice. He turned in her direction. The girl asked why he was here. The guys were very surprised and asked if he knew this beauty. Ning Tianlin replied that he didn't know him. Lin Jiayi asked if he was also studying at this university and said that she was at the Faculty of Foreign Languages. The boy's neighbor replied that they were studying engineering. Ning Tianlin turned around and said that he was leaving as he still had things to do. The girl asked what was going on and said that she could help him. Ning Tianlin explained that today was the 15th of July according to the lunar calendar, and he was going to kill the night ghosts. His neighbor laughed and exclaimed that he was cool. After he didn't sleep all night, he also said that he would kill ghosts. Although he hasn't known him for long, he is not petty. The guy asked the girl if she owed him money or if she was lying to him about her feelings. Lin Jiayi replied that she owed him an apology and some truth. In front of us is the entrance to the Fengling Internet Cafe. The clipping hung above the door. The boy was sitting in front of the computer. He kept one hand on the mouse, the other on the keyboard. He squeezed this mouse very tightly, so much so that his hand began to tremble. The boy stood up from the table because he heard or saw something ahead. He opened his eyes slightly and moved his eyebrows towards his nose. His gaze sparkled with green light. He saw some chains in front of him. These chains were very strong with a hook in front. Ning Tianlin managed to dodge the blow of a long, huge chain. He asked the system who they were. The system replied that these were ghost messengers from the afterlife and they wanted to catch him. Ning Tianlin replied that he was a living person now. The system said that the ghost messenger is very good material for improvement. Since these are not people, it will be easier for him to kill them morally. So when he resurrected him, he deliberately did not erase his name from the book of the living and the dead. Ning Tianlin said that you need to be careful, so you need to leave here first. According to the messengers, he is a ghost who needs to be arrested and punished. The guy asked if an ice soul could attack messengers. The system replied that it could because these are just energy bodies. He then asked what about their fighting strength. They are both weaker than him and their combat strength is several points lower. The boy saw several messengers in front of him. An urgent task appeared before him. It was necessary to kill 2 ghostly messengers. If the task was successfully completed, he would be awarded 300 energy points. If he failed, 1,000 points would be deducted. The boy thought that he needed to merge with the centipede. The guys began to swing their chains more and more. The chain rattled around him. Ning Tianlin decided to show them how strong he was. Will they be able to catch him now? He took his sword and rushed towards his opponents. The messengers began to squeeze their chains and jingle them more and more as they approached the boy. They were blindfolded with some white ribbons. Ning Tianlin was surprised by this. He approached the messengers closer and closer. He was already nearby. The boy raised his sword and wanted to thrust it into the chest of one of them. Looking at him, he exclaimed that the messenger had already gotten him. But when he wanted to thrust his sword into him, he put his weapon in front of him. He gave orders to 100 ghosts to listen to him and gather together. Then the boy again raised his sharp sword as high as possible, but a dark haze enveloped him. She began to envelop him more and more tightly. The boy tried to control himself. This powerful force attacked him and threw him back. The boy could barely stand on his feet. The messengers had their eyes bandaged, and it was amazing how they fought him without seeing anything. Suddenly, the messenger began to run away from the boy. Ning Tianlin did not let go of his weapon. He accelerated as fast as possible and threw his weapon hand back. The boy threw the bladed weapon straight towards the messenger. A cold blade stuck into the guy's back. He began to scream as he fell down. Ning Tianlin made a movement to the side. The black haze began to move away from him. Some crystal was shrouded in this black veil, but he did not stop glowing in the darkness. The boy thought about it when he saw this. He couldn't figure out what it could be. The system explained to Ning Tianlin that this is a Yin Crystal, which is an accumulation of the energy of ghosts and souls. He said that he could help him collect such crystals. The boy asked if he absorbed them. Would his glasses increase? And how can he absorb them? The system promised to help him exchange them for energy points, but explained that there was an additional fee for this. The boy agreed with the system and said that he was very lucky. Meanwhile, the white-haired man was saying that Gao Wen and Li Jian seemed to be heading to the world of the living to arrest the wandering soul of Ning Tianlin. The lamps of life went out, which means the souls left the body. Is someone really protecting this boy? The guy replied that the loss of 2 ghostly messengers was not some trifle. If those at the top find out, it will affect them too. He asked permission to investigate this matter. The gray-haired man replied that the world of living people is something interesting. He thinks he can ask a living person for help in investigating. And then some kind of mustachioed and bearded man appeared in front of us. He closed his eyes and looked ahead. There was a small light green circle on the floor. White smoke came out of this hole. The gray-haired guy told Mentor Zhang that they had not seen each other for a long time. The man replied that if the jade broke, a spirit from the underworld would appear. He asked if the guy had come to remember the past. The guy replied that he knows how to joke, but still he came to ask him for a favor. 2 of his messengers disappeared from this world without a trace. Zhang said that he understood him, and that this soul must be in Qinbei City. Yiqiao Kangmen also asked him to find someone, and he should also be in that city. He said that he would send his student to search. The gray-haired guy thanked him for this. Zhang, sitting near this circle with smoke, said that a soul capable of killing a ghostly messenger and even arousing the wrath of young Kangmen is very interesting. This is not just any information, and isn't this a situation that violates the laws of the living and the dead? The system, watching what was happening, chuckled. I even laughed a little sarcastically. Ning Tianlin asked the system what it was. The system explained that it was nothing. It just grinned at the smug moral principles of the people. Ning Tianlin grimaced and said that he had been killing cows for days. He asked why the system was laughing at him. 1 cow has more vitality than an ordinary person. For killing the cattle, his level increased to 22, and he received a double energy card for an hour. Isn't that better than killing bad guys all the time? The system said that someone wanted to find out information about him, but he blocked the data. The boy asked if this was the afterlife. The system replied, no. Ning Tianlin decided that this girl was the killer or the old man in the black robe. Does he really want to intimidate him? The system asked if everything would be okay if he didn't go to class. Ning Tianlin said that thanks to the evidence he found, the director is in his power, so that he does not need to go to university, and at the same time, he can easily graduate from it. The system did not mean training. She thought that he went to class to rub shoulders with Lin Jiayi and Shu Yishan. The boy became nervous and asked the system to explain what it meant. He doesn't have time for this, and why should he communicate with her? He, like her father, wants to stay away from her. The boy invited the system to eat meat. He handed it to her palm. The centipede extended its paws. Several more lumps appeared above it. The boy asked the system what happened to the centipede. The system replied that it absorbed the soul of the cow. He was very surprised that the cow had a soul and he did not see it. The system explained that all living beings have a soul. Without the help of external forces, he cannot see the soul. Previously, he could only see the souls of the ghost messengers because they allowed him to see them. If he wants to see souls, he can exchange 100 points for yin-yang eyes. The boy exclaimed that he was buying and saw that the centipede was absorbing the soul of the cow. It turns out she can eat this too. The system responded that once the centipede absorbs a certain number of souls of one type, it will be able to transform into the corresponding species. By merging with a centipede, it can also become another species. Ning Tianlin asked if he could transform into anyone he wanted. He had long wanted to become a bird and feel what it was like to fly. He exclaimed after listening to the system that children have to make choices, but adults can choose everything. He will work very hard to kill cows and get points, and very soon he will reach a high level. Having received the aircraft, he will go to one place. The system apologized for the interruption, but said that he thought he would want to know the news. The boy asked what was the matter. The system replied that something happened to his sister Ning Tianxin. Ning Tianlin became very worried. He began to sweat and wondered what could have happened to her. A huge, tall building stretched out in front of us. The sky was blue and light. The hospital building was pierced by rays of bright sunlight. The girl was lying in a hospital bed. Her hands were bandaged. Her friends said that everything would be fine. She just needed to rest. Medicine is now very highly developed, and she will get better because she is very young and then she will go to university. The patient answered Susu and asked her not to cry because she was right and everything would work out. Susu said that she was going to the store because the girl had not eaten since she was admitted to the hospital. Does she want anything? Ning Tianxin replied that she was not picky about food and asked her to take what she wanted. The girl remained in the room and clutched the sheet in her hands. She crumpled it and began to think. She thought about her parents, and most of all, she thought about her brother. The girl thought that she could go to the University of the Arts and help her family. As a result, a few days after the start of school, her phone exploded. Ning Tianxin asked her brother what I should do now. Ning Tianlin replied that he had come, and why was she afraid? Tears sparkled in the girl's eyes. She was full of pain and despair. The boy hugged her and began to calm her down. He said that everything was fine and he was here. The guy decided not to let go of those who harmed his beloved sister. Ning Tianxin thanked her brother and said that she is much better now. She asked if he had checked on his parents. He cannot appear in a dream only to her. He must visit his mom and dad. The boy exclaimed that his sister was not sleeping and gave her some kind of pill to eat. The girl asked if this was a dream. She was glad that her brother was alive. She asked to pinch her quickly. Ning Tianlin laughed and told his sister that everything was absolutely accurate. Aliens saved him. Then an alien spaceship flew nearby and for some reason they saved it. Before the aliens left, they gave them many different things. So that they no longer have to worry about money, the pill that he gave her was also their gift. The girl exclaimed that her hands really felt better. Aliens are so cool. She looked at her hands and said that they had indeed healed. The girl asked her brother, since he survived, why he only came to her now. The boy replied that he lived not so long ago. As soon as he studied the things donated by the aliens, he immediately went to her. Suddenly, Susu appeared at the door. She stood on the threshold, and when she saw the boy, she looked at him carefully. The girl told her friend that she had brought her something. She began to enter the room. When she approached the hospital bed, she asked Ning Tianxin who it was next to her. The girl immediately turned towards her friend. Ning Tianlin held his hands on his hips and looked at her. Susu told the girl that her wounds had already healed and that was very great. But how did this happen? She told her that a good person succeeds in everything. The girl was very happy for her friend. Ning Tianxin introduced Susa to her brother Ning Tianlin, and she told the boy that this was her friend from university. My friend's name is Yin Susu. The girl turned to the boy and greeted him with a smile. Ning Tianlin also smiled and greeted her. Ning Tianxin explained to her friend that her brother was her savior. Her wounds healed thanks to his pill. The girl replied that it seemed like some kind of family secret recipe. In any case, since she feels better, everything is fine. She invited the guys to go have lunch. Ning Tianlin said that he would first discharge his sister from the hospital and let the three of them wait for him at the exit. He asked the system to order them a luxury car and reserve the most expensive restaurant. Ning Tianxin told her friend that she didn't know what place her brother would take them to, and she decided to look at the reviews. You also need to order a taxi since today she is being discharged from the hospital. It may allow you to call Comfort Plus. The brother asked the girls why they didn't get into the car. They were very surprised that this car was ordered for them. After they sat, Ning Tianxin thanked them for their hospitality and waved to them. The boy replied that there was nothing and thanked her for taking care of his sister. Ning Tianxin asked her brother to go home. He agreed, but asked not to tell his parents anything about his resurrection yet. Otherwise, they will worry and think she has gone crazy. Girls stood on the side of the road and talked about their car. By chance, this is not the new model that costs about $1 billion? The second girl replied that she had never seen one like this. It's probably made to order. Ning Tianlin told his sister that while he was away from home, all the work was on her. He asked if she was an obedient girl and took care of her parents. The boy explained to the girl that now she does not need to worry about anything because he has returned and will always protect her. Ning Tianxin was happy. Now she has a brother who will protect her. And in the future, when she becomes famous, she will take care of her brother. The boy told his sister that he would pick her up for the weekend. She immediately agreed. The girls who were watching them said that they had not liked this Ning Tianxin for a long time. She pretends to be such a proper girl, but she lives off her daddy. The second replied that she took a bunch of photos, and now they will see what will happen to her reputation when they post them on the internet. The system told Ning Tianlin that his sister was injured due to the phone explosion. She collected all the information about everyone who is related to this. She decided to start with the manufacturer. Meanwhile, the guy was telling Mr. Tian that they couldn't reduce the silicon content of the battery again, otherwise it would explode. The men were sitting at the table, and Mr. Tian replied that he should drink better and stop spoiling his mood. Suddenly, a huge long snake began to creep up on those sitting at the table. She quietly crawled up and opened her fanged mouth. She began to attack the guy. He exclaimed that something had bitten his leg. The guy began to crawl back away from the snake, but it was already too late. The girl who was sitting next to Mr. Tian began to scream in fear. The snake now crawled up to Mr. Tian and attacked him right on his neck. She sank her poisonous fangs into him. The boys and the girl began to scream in pain and fear. After that, they fell to the floor. Meanwhile, a mosquito flew to the window. He buzzed and squeaked, flapping his wings. The system took this mosquito and began to examine it. She explained that there were a total of 80 people. According to his order, 6 people have already been killed and 74 have been punished. Ning Tianlin replied to the system that in that case, that was all. There are only 2 big goals left. The first goal is to make Ning Tianxin a celebrity, and the second is to move to the 25th level and, after receiving a flying machine, obtain a license to kill from the ruler of this country. He only asked the system not to praise him too much when he reached level 25. Ning Tianlin said that it is too unprofitable to exchange money for energy. The system responded that things belonging to the business empire would still remain on Earth after being exchanged for money. First, you need to exchange points for starting capital, and then exchange it for a robot that will create a company for it. The robot greeted his master and explained that he was the smart robot Bai Yao and would carry out all his orders. The boy said that his first order was to make his sister a superstar who would be known both domestically and internationally. The robot immediately agreed to carry out his master's orders. Ning Tianxin was already in the studio. She thanked Mr. Milky Way for the gifts. The live broadcast was soon ending and she thanked everyone for their support. The boy decided to call his sister. He picked up the phone and dialed the girl. She asked her brother why he sent her so many missiles. He spent too much. The platform already takes half the amount as a commission, Ning Tianlin replied to his sister. That everything is fine. If she wants to become famous, she will have to try. He said that they no longer needed money. Ning Tianxin asked not to spend so much anyway, and don't forget to come home on the weekend. The boy replied that he would not forget and wished good night to the girl. In front of him was an F-class flying machine. Ning Tianlin decided that he would now meet with that person. The house was on the top of a hill. Mr. Lin was asked how his granddaughter was. The man replied that everything was the same. If they need his help, then just let him say it. The man thanked the chairman. Meanwhile, someone's feet were already approaching the men sitting at the table. Guys with machine guns stood near the chairman. They became wary and asked who was there. Ning Tianlin replied that he did not come with malicious intent, but to transfer alien technology to them. He introduced himself to them and explained that he was an alien. He brought with him advanced technologies that will allow this country to take dominion over the entire planet. The system told the boy that dozens of sniper rifles were pointed at him. Ning Tianlin continued to explain that he was now in the body of a deceased person from Sichuan City. A month ago, he had an accident and he is temporarily using his body. They can simply call him Xiao Ning. The guys noticed that he really didn't have any weapons. Then the chairman replied to his bodyguard that he understood everything and they could go. The boy continued to say that in exchange for technology, he was asking permission to join Military Unit 001, just to make him a freelancer, and allow them not to fulfill basic responsibilities so that they can enjoy all the rights and benefits that others have. The chairman replied that he seemed to know a lot. Unit 001 is a legendary special forces unit whose existence is known to no more than 10 people. There are only 12 people in the unit with the codename Zodiac, and the tasks they perform are the highest state secret. One of the rights of the unit is exemption from liability for murder. If a person is killed, they do not bear any responsibility. If everything he said is true, then he doesn't need equipment and reconnaissance units 001. It looks like he wants to be cleared of murder. Ning Tianlin replied that it was true, he was an alien. Of course, he promises that he will not kill indiscriminately. As a sign of sincerity, he will show them how he managed to get here. The guys stared at the boy. He began to show the chairman a huge aircraft. The men began to look at him. One of them exclaimed that this flying saucer was simply huge. They immediately turned their heads, opening their mouths. The boy told the chairman that if he agreed, they could give him a list of technologies they needed. In a week, he will provide it to them. The chairman was very surprised and asked if there were any technologies that they needed. Ning Tianlin replied that any. The chairman in this case decided to allow him to enter the 001st Division, but he has one more condition. He must provide his technology only to them. The boy agreed to cooperate. The system asked if he was afraid that they would use his technology to improve the well-being of the people, and this would affect the construction of his business empire. Ning Tianlin explained that he is not afraid, since military technology is 5 to 10 years ahead of civilian technology. Unexpectedly, the chairman asked if he was able to cure a deadly earthly disease. The boy replied that he could do it. Then the chairman asked to save his granddaughter. She has an incurable disease and he doesn't know how long she will last. Ning Tianlin agreed. The chairman thanked the boy and said that in this case he would immediately prepare the car. The boy asked not to do this. They can board his flying saucer and it will be faster that way. The chairman said that in this case he also wants to experience alien technology. Ning Tianlin replied that he would be glad to have him on board. The chairman found the best doctors from all over the world, but there was no result. So it was good that he met Mr. Ning Tianlin. The boy promised to do everything in his power, and then the flying saucer rose high into the sky. She began to rise above the houses higher and higher. After landing, they began to approach the building. The chairman said that they really got there in an instant. He looks forward to their cooperation. The man explained to the boy that his granddaughter was getting worse as soon as she saw sunlight. That's why they closed the curtains. He asked if he needed a light to examine her. The boy asked not to do this because he can see in the dark. He approached Xingjian and asked the system what kind of disease she had. The system looked at the girl and answered the boy that she would say after examining her, but let them turn on the light first. Ning Tianlin replied to the system that if they turned on the light, she would have a seizure. But the boy asked to turn it on anyway, because he was treating her. He said that he had some idea what was going on, but you need to turn on the light to be sure. The man immediately agreed and went to the switch. He immediately turned on the light. The boy suddenly looked very carefully at the girl and some thought flashed through his head. Xingjian lay there with a sad look on her face. Thin white wisps of smoke rose around her. The girl was very sad, although unconscious. The boy realized that her soul was dissolving. He exclaimed that this must be stopped as soon as possible. Beads of sweat ran down his face. The system said that he could turn her entire body except her brain into mincemeat. The boy decided that she had gone crazy. He asked if she wanted him to beat his granddaughter in front of her grandfather. The system replied that it didn't care, and the boy exclaimed that he would do everything now. He told the chairman that he would now begin the treatment of his granddaughter. But this was a secret technique of his planet, so he would have to leave the room. The man listened to him and immediately left. The boy could not understand whether he was saving her or killing her. He asked the system to put up a sound barrier so they wouldn't be heard outside. The system immediately obeyed. Ning Tianlin decided to hit her neck first to prevent her from suffering too much. The boy rolled up his sleeves and came as close to the girl as possible. There was a flash of dark color. The girl was still unconscious. The boy asked the system if he did it right. The system asked if he left bones for the dogs. He said to turn her body into mince, including the bones. Some time passed. Ning Tianlin asked the system if this was normal. She replied that she would do and asked to proceed to the next step. Suddenly, a voice outside the door asked Mr. Ning Tianlin if he could turn on the light. The boy immediately became wary and glanced towards the doors. The chairman appeared in front of him. He was very nervous and clenched his fists. His gaze was wary, and his eyebrows were knitted towards his nose. He was scared and furious. The chairman exclaimed that he would tear him to pieces. He took out a weapon and pointed it towards the boy. The bullet flew towards Ning Tianlin, but he seemed to stop her with some kind of barrier. He asked the man to calm down and explained that he was in the process of healing her. The man clenched his teeth and called him a freak. He promised to bury him alive. The boy glanced at him tiredly and sighed heavily. The system reported that 300 points had already been spent. He received the Rebirth Lotus item. A huge flower appeared in his hands. This flower glowed with a bright yellow light. The boy tried to catch him. The chairman watched what was happening. He didn't understand what was happening at all. The flower began to rise higher and higher above the girl's head. Her hair began to move, as if the wind was blowing it to the sides. The system reported that the body had been recovered. The last step left is a vitality pill for 280 points. The boy was angry that he would have to spend points again, but the system asked him to stop already and dilute the tablet with water and give it to the girl. He felt sorry for wasting energy points, but he asked to bring him some water. The chairman ordered his man to quickly bring water. The man immediately went to get a drink. The chairman himself took water from his subordinate and brought it to Ning Tianlin's room. The boy asked for water and threw some kind of pill into a cup of water. The water in his cup completely changed color. She became kind of sandy. The boy brought this cup to the girl's lips and began to feed her his potion. He held the girl by the shoulder and watched her, and she still didn't open her eyes. Meanwhile, some gray air balloons began to fly in the air. The men saw it and thought what it might be. A gray-haired old man in a hood stood near the chairman. He listened carefully and observed what was happening. His gaze changed abruptly. The man thought that these were the lost parts of this girl's soul. He thought he was special, but he didn't expect that this boy had such incomprehensible power. After Ning Tianlin did this to the girl, he exclaimed that that was all. The father walked up to the hospital bed and looked at the girl. He began calling her by name. Lin began to open her large, bright eyes. The chairman asked to quickly bring him water. He exclaimed that Lin had woken up. The girl also asked for a drink. Grandfather exclaimed that he was nearby. A year later, she finally woke up. The granddaughter asked her grandfather not to cry. Ning Tianlin explained to the chairman that she was very weak right now and needed to rest for a while. He explained to the man that he would wait for him outside. The chairman replied that he understood everything and would come soon. When the man walked out into the corridor, he thanked Mr. Ning Tianlin. The guy replied that he was welcome and said that his granddaughter would get better soon. Then the man asked the boy what kind of disease it was and whether it could happen again. Ning Tianlin replied that his granddaughter was not sick. Someone poisoned her with a poison called Yin and Yang Soul Eater. When grandfather heard such an answer, he was simply shocked how this could happen. The boy began to confirm that she was indeed poisoned. To prepare this poison, you must first mash a bug called the Soul Eater. After this, it must be soaked in salt water for a period of 7 to 49 days. Then it is placed in fire and ice for a very long time, and only then the poison is ready. The prepared powder has neither color nor odor, so that a person will not notice it. After the Yin and Yang Soul Eater enters the body, it mixes with the blood. That's why he had to grind his granddaughter into powder. The Yin and Yang Soul Eater expels the soul from the body, after which it turns the person into a vegetable. The chairman exclaimed that judging by his words, someone tried to kill his granddaughter. He closed his eyes and said that today was actually a very good day. He has prepared festive dishes and asks the boy to drink with him. But Ning Tianlin refused and explained that he had other things to do. If his granddaughter needs help, she should send someone to get him. The chairman said that if he also needed help, then he should boldly contact him. A hooded man appeared behind the man and said that it was he who stole his rare book and funeral cauldron on the train. That's why it seemed familiar to him. The chairman exclaimed that the matter was over and asked not to mention it anymore. It's better to let Lin help him catch the one who almost killed him. The hooded man bowed his head in front of him and replied that he understood everything. But I thought to myself that this guy stole his merits and magical things. He will definitely restore his reputation. The flying saucer took off skyward, rising to the very sky. The girl exclaimed that it was very cool and so fast. The boy replied that the point was not that she wanted to bring him home as quickly as possible. Has anyone else seen this flying saucer besides them? Ning Tianlin explained that he was afraid of scaring them. The girl said that the good news is that he is alive. The sooner he tells them, the better. Ning Tianlin asked her to come in first and tell them so that he doesn't shock them too much. The girl, of course, agreed. The boy thought about how he would take it. The system explained that he would not be happy about this. The boy turned his head in her direction. He asked the system what it meant. Meanwhile, he approached the house and heard an appeal to his father. The boy quickly opened the door and asked his dad what happened to him. The man stood up and exclaimed that it was Ning Tianlin who had come. They were very surprised. The boy ran up to his dad and began to hug him. He tried to explain to mom and dad that he didn't die and he came back. Parents asked their children if they had dinner. They asked if we could cook something for them. The boy replied that there was no need because they had already eaten, and he asked his father who wounded him. The father replied that he himself accidentally fell off the motorcycle. Is he correct? His mother confirmed that he was telling the truth. Then the son handed him some pills. My father immediately took them, and he and my mother ate one pill at a time. The father was very surprised when he looked at his hand. His arm was healing and his head no longer hurt. Mom looked at Ning Tianlin's father and exclaimed that his hair had turned black. Ning Rong replied that her wrinkles also disappeared. Ning Tianlin asked his father what really happened and why he was beaten so badly. The mother asked her son to stop since everything was already in the past. He returned home to them, and that's enough. The father bowed his head down and asked his son not to think about it. But Ning Tianlin replied that dad is not the kind of person who would get into a fight. It seems they started first. His father looked at him with a frightened, strange look. He couldn't say anything, but the son insisted on an honest answer. He looked at his father and waited for an explanation. Ning Rong asked his son if he remembered the girl he so bravely helped. Then his sister intervened and exclaimed that she remembered. That girl didn't even come to her brother's funeral, as if they were going to blackmail her. The father continued that after he entered the university, this girl and her company came here, made a lot of noise and handed over this silk banner and 30,000 yuan. The sister was surprised and asked if she didn't know that her brother died saving her. Giving 30,000 for this is the same as giving alms. She asked her brother to go and throw money in this girl's face, but the father replied that it would not work since there was no more money. That night, a group of people broke into the house and stole money. They beat him up. They looked very young and threatened him. They said that if he called the police, they would find Ning Tianxin and harm her. They had already lost their son and could not lose their daughter as well. The boy exhaled heavily. He asked his father to leave for Jinbei, but the father asked where their family got so much money. Even if they sell their house, they won't be able to buy a toilet in Jinbei. Ning Tianlin replied that everything was fine. The aliens left him a lot of money and they could spend it. The sister said that her brother was telling the truth. He even wants to buy out the live streaming platform to make it popular. The sister called her parents to come with them. In the future, they will not have to worry about money and will take care of it. Meanwhile, at the table, someone asked if he called his parents fools. Why did they give them 30,000 yuan? They probably went to give the money so that there would be no gossip that his family was ungrateful. The other guy replied that he was smart and they really didn't need the 30,000. But he didn't want to admit where the money was until the guy beat him thoroughly. The guy laughed and said that his facial expression at that moment was so funny. Suddenly, Ning Tianlin approached them. He asked if they were happy that they had beaten someone. Then the guy turned to him and made an obscene gesture. He said that they were communicating and asked what he needed. He exclaimed that if the boy interfered with them, they would beat him too. Then Ning Tianlin gave this guy a welcome. He knocked him to the ground, and the other guys were simply shocked by what was happening. Ning Tianlin said that although he wants them to kneel in front of his parents, they are too soft-hearted, so he has already forgiven them. The boy was very angry. His eyes glowed with a bloody red light. He exclaimed, heading towards his opponents and those who had offended his father, that he would judge them personally. The gang leader asked his guys to deal with him immediately. They approached the boy, but Ning Tianlin threw them to the ground with one blow of his hand. How could they hurt innocent people and still be proud of it? He never heard any words of gratitude, but even so, they didn't tell his parents anything. What did they do instead? They handed over 30,000 yuan and then beat them. The boy stood in front of them and asked if they had anything to add. Then one of them threw himself on his knees in front of him and exclaimed that he had made a mistake. He will not do this again and will return all the money. He will immediately ask for forgiveness from his parents. Ning Tianlin asked the system if he really regrets and feels guilty. The system replied that this was not true and he was just scared. Then the boy closed his eyes. He was very serious and decided to be merciless. The guy sitting on his knees realized this. There was some kind of flash. Ning Tianlin could not vouch for himself. He destroyed everything, avenging his parents. The guys were simply torn apart for bullying his father and mother. Ning Tianlin's phone rang. He asked what happened. The sister told her brother that mom had prepared dinner, and if he didn't come, she would eat everything. The boy asked to leave it for him and promised to return soon, so they agreed to meet soon. The system asked why he went soft again and didn't kill these guys. Ning Tianlin explained that there would be a fuss and they didn't deserve to die. He hopes they will improve. He thinks that he cannot lead the life that the system expects from him. What to do if his parents raised him to be a good person? Why doesn't the system change its owner? He hopes that they too will be able to understand what goodness is. Ning Tianlin asked the system if it could tell him why he chose him. The system replied that the time had not yet come and asked what he would do tomorrow. The boy said that his parents were upset about the rent, so tomorrow they will go to look at apartments. Ning Tianlin went to his parents' house the next day to look at apartments. He asked mom and dad not to think about money while looking at the apartment. Whichever one they like, they will buy it. The parents replied that they had been poor all their lives, but they would try. And so they were welcomed to the Golden City and explained that they were the best consultants. They asked how they could help them. Ning Tianlin replied that their family could afford to buy an apartment. The guys thought that they definitely had money. They arrived in an expensive car. The rich have arrived and they must not be missed under any circumstances. Ning Tianlin asked the system which of these realtors was better. The system replied that it was the one that sits around the corner and eats doshirak. She is smart, attentive, and polite, and will definitely be able to satisfy all his requirements for purchasing a home. Ning Tianlin asked her to show the apartments. Then the consultants called Jing Jing and said that a client was looking for her. The girl waved and said hello. She asked what their requirements for the apartment were. For example, type of apartment, location, area, and everything else. And so the boy rushed forward towards some car, which suddenly stopped in front of him. He threw a sharp glance in his direction and ran as fast as he could. Everything was mixed up in his head. The boy ran very fast and stopped this powerful, huge car with his hand. It was something supernatural. The wheels made a strange sound. Ning Tianlin thought that if he had not been there, something could have happened to his parents and sister. He was very angry and went right up to the hood of the car. The boy slammed his fist on the car. He looked menacingly at the man behind the wheel and asked him to get out. How does he even drive a car? The driver jumped out and exclaimed that he was at fault. He asked to forgive him. If it weren't for him, there would have been an accident. He began to insist that he did not do this on purpose. The sister told her brother that he admitted his guilt and asked him not to be angry. The parents also said that they were not harmed. Then the boy turned to the driver and said that he was lucky. After all, he wanted to force him to kneel. The driver began to thank him. He asked if the guy was buying an apartment in this place. He began to advise under no circumstances to buy an apartment here. He had a lot of problems from her. Ning Tianlin asked what he meant. The man began to explain that after buying an apartment in this place, a dark streak began in his life. These beads on his neck are just fake, and the clothes are from the market. You will also have to mortgage the car for 400,000 yuan. Ning Tianlin said that he would not pay him to repair the car. The driver replied that it was his fault and he could not force him to pay. He just wanted to say that previously his fortune was estimated at 200 million, and after buying the house his company went bankrupt. Soon he won't even be able to afford bus fare. He had not been superstitious before, but all this happened within 3 months of buying the apartment. Ning Tianlin turned to the system and suggested that she buy another house in this case. Then the system suggested feng shui, which would definitely help the owner's growth. The boy replied that he knew nothing at all about feng shui, and he asked how he should change his fate. Some guys asked Cao Dafa what he was doing. The driver looked at them with strange eyes. He was very scared, and the guys asked to quickly drive this man away from here. Ning Tianlin watched what was happening. People in black suits walked towards the driver. The driver took out a knife and said that until he left the apartment he would not leave. He already lost all his money, so now he should be afraid. The guys in suits suddenly stopped. One of the men exclaimed that he would pay 100,000 to anyone who caught him and took him to the police station. The man showed the guys the same driver. The guys immediately rushed at the guy. The driver raised his sharp knife above his head and exclaimed that he would immediately kill everyone. He wanted to hit one of the offenders, but the guy stopped his hand. He didn't let the driver do anything stupid. He simply took the fist of his offenders in his hand and moved it away from the driver. He asked these guys to calm down quickly. He looked at them with a determined look. The driver was very surprised that this guy protected him by stopping these guys. The man in the black suit took his hand. Streams of sweat ran down his face. The main man clenched his teeth and knitted his eyebrows towards his nose. He looked at the boy. The man asked if he knew this driver Cao Dafa. Ning Tianlin replied that no, and he was here to choose an apartment for himself. and they were making a mess here. Then the man said that everyone was free. He asked them to go to the finance office, where they would be paid 2,000 for their hard work. Ning Tianlin asked the driver to sit down for now and promised to come to him later. The guy immediately agreed and stepped aside. Meanwhile, Ning Tianlin was explained that feng shui here is not very good. "Why don't they change this place?" the boy exclaimed. "That everything is in order, now he will call the feng shui master." Meanwhile, the sun illuminated all the apartments that were provided to the boy. A man in a hood was sitting at a table. He was somehow tortured and scared. He was even frightened when his phone suddenly rang. The man decided that this number was familiar to him. "I him." But few people know his number. Perhaps this is a rich man who was recommended to him. The man answered the call. They asked him if he knew anything about feng shui. The old man replied that of course he understood and asked who he was. The phone answered that he was Ning Tianlin, and since he knows feng shui, he asked him to come to the Golden City sales department. The gray-haired man asked how he spoke to him and whether he even knew who he was. But then the man's face suddenly changed and asked him if he was Ning Tianlin. Then the gray-haired man changed his tone. Ning Tianlin replied that it was him and asked if he would come. The man replied that he would be there soon. Ning Tianlin asked the consultants to continue showing houses. They want the biggest one with a garden, a swimming pool, and parking. The house is full of everything you need. The girl guaranteed that there were no problems with feng shui in their houses. Meanwhile, the car had already arrived, and the old man began to enter the room. One of the guys asked Old Man Shui what brought him here suddenly, but the old man immediately turned to Mr. Ning and asked why he called him. The boy replied that he was going to buy a house. He heard that a man knew about feng shui and wanted him to help him with advice. The driver was very surprised. After all, Old Man Shui is a famous feng shui master. He's so polite to this guy, it's good that there wasn't a quarrel. The gray-haired old man answered the boy that he would help him without any problems. Ning Tianlin's father apologized for disturbing him. He explained that someone just said that this house had bad feng shui, so the child got worried and even called him. The man shook his hand in response and said that there was nothing wrong with it. When he shook his father's hand, he felt that there was no line of fate on his hand, and this family was very strange. Ning Tianlin addressed the driver. He asked if he could help this man solve his problem and let him consider it a good deed. The old man was very surprised how he knew his real name. It had been a long time since he mentioned it to people. This guy is truly incomprehensible. The boy asked to continue to calmly inspect the house, while he went and checked this unlucky guy. Sui said that he has a dark aura, 3 horns tilted down, and the mole in the middle is also a strange color. Ning Tianlin asked what this meant. Sui replied that the horn represents the moon, and the 3 horns mean that these 3 months things are not going well for Mr. Cow. The mole in the middle means wealth, but now it has darkened. It looks like the financial situation is about to get worse. Cow exclaimed that the master had spoken the truth and asked to be saved. The man replied that since Mr. Ning asked, he would try his best. He asked the guy to think carefully about what he did 3 months ago that the situation had changed dramatically. Ning Tianlin decided that this charlatan knew what he was talking about. Cow thought for a moment and replied that 3 months ago he bought a house here. But the old man said that the matter was not in the house. He was responsible for feng shui from the moment of choosing a site to the construction of houses. Although, if there are no problems with the situation, but someone changed the feng shui, then he is not sure. The guy was very surprised and asked if someone really wanted to harm him. Ning Tianlin asked Cow if he changed the layout of the house after he moved into it. The guy replied that he didn't change it, he just stopped by. He just hung up the wedding photos, but who doesn't hang them in their home? The boy then decided to go and check. Cow replied that he would take them to his home, and so they headed towards this guy's huge 2-story house. When Ning Tianlin began to enter the room, he exclaimed that this was the house of his dreams. The guy showed one of his wedding photos. The old man glanced at this photo. He said that this was it and asked to take the photo and pull out the nail. The guy began to take a photo but suddenly stopped and asked a question. The old man asked what happened. Cow replied that it seemed that this nail could not be pulled out. He tried with all his might to pull the nail out of the wall, but he couldn't. The old man said that the main instigator of the deterioration of his situation had appeared. This thing is called an ominous nail. The guy asked what kind of scum wants to harm him. The old man explained that there are only 36 such nails. Each of them affects a certain area of life. Its attribute is wood, and metal defeats wood. Therefore, if he falls into decline, then the same will happen to the feng shui of his home. Since someone wanted to harm him, this nail cannot be pulled out just like that. Ning Tianlin walked to the wall and tried to pull it out. He did it very easily. The old man was perplexed by what happened. He began to watch the boy with his mouth open. Zhui thought to himself that this boy surprised him again and again. Ning Tianlin asked the system if this was some kind of ritual vessel. The system responded that it was not experienced enough in this. The old man chuckled and said that, as he had said, there were only 36 of them, 35 more to go. He asked to continue searching. Cao exclaimed that he would find them all. And then a few minutes passed. The guys exclaimed that they had found everything. Cao asked the old man whether the feng shui of his house would now be restored. The old man interrupted him and said that it was only because of these nails that he could not have fallen into such disrepair in just 3 months. Something else must have influenced it. The boy asked, "What exactly?" Shui replied that Lord Cao's enemy must have formed a magic seal with the help of heaven, earth, and man. They destroyed only one part of it, the sky. The 5 elements include killing with metal, burying in the ground, flooding, fire, and entangling with trees. Killing with metal has already happened. Entangling with wood is useless for Mr. Cao. All that remains is burial in the ground, fire, and flood. Ning Tianlin asked if the earth element uses the burying method. The guys weighed everything that was happening and decided that they needed to go outside. The old man was holding a circle with different symbols in his hands. In the middle of the circle was the sign of yin and yang. Zhui said that this thing was probably buried under the flower bed. Cao supported him and they moved on. The guys approached a beautiful bright flower garden. The guy fell to his knees on the ground. He took out his knife and began to pick at the ground under the bright green grass. His look suddenly changed and the boy exclaimed that there was something here. When he dug into the ground, there was something scarlet in the hole inside. He exclaimed that he had found it. The guy asked to see it or not. Ning Tianlin asked what this disgusting thing was. The old man explained that it was fox blood, as well as Mr. Cao's hair and nails, mixed with chicken feathers. This was done so that his fate would become as unhappy as that of a chicken in soup, and they would drive him away from everywhere like a mangy fox. Ning Tianlin thought about it and asked, since the one who harmed Cao Dafa was able to get his hair and nails, then whether the last part of the seal was the person Cao Dafa himself. The old man replied that he thought Mr. Cao already knew who this ill-wisher was. It should have something on it that was given by that person. Cao changed his gaze and reached his hand towards his necklace. He seemed to understand everything. The boy took off his beads and handed them to the old man. Zhui showed the guy where to cut them. He took a knife and sawed the bead in half. Indeed, there is something inside the beads. There was gecko tail powder soaked in snake blood. Cao asked the old man what it was. The old man explained that the gecko sheds its tail to escape death. The tail symbolizes rebirth. But if it is soaked in the blood of a snake, it will be cursed for life. The guy exclaimed that this was very cruel. He asked Old Man Shui to save him. The old man replied that he needed to burn all these things, and then the feng shui of his house would return to normal. Ning Tianlin, thoughtful, said that this is not all. They should look again because the problem is not solved yet. The boy thought that the task had not been completed, which means that everything is not so simple. The old man agreed with the boy and said that he would check everything again. He thought that if he were not inferior to him in knowledge, you would have been given a good beating long ago. The old man began to frantically rotate his amulet. It spun at great speed. The old man exclaimed, observing the amulet, that there was something else in the house. They walked together towards the house. There was some kind of black, evil aura inside him. Old Man Shui asked himself how he didn't notice this ominous energy right away. He asked Mr. Cao how many enemies he had. Someone sent a demon to him. He asked if the man who had given him the ominous nails had traveled through Southeast Asia. Cao replied that no. And in truth, the enemy who spoiled his fate was his mistress. But she had never been to Southeast Asia. The old man asked if there was anyone else who was next to him at that time. It could be anyone. The guy exclaimed that this was impossible. A year ago, his wife traveled to Southeast Asia. Ning Tianlin advised inviting her here to ask her personally. The guy immediately grabbed the phone and exclaimed that he would now call his wife. And now, several hours have passed. The girl knocked on the door and began to enter the room. As she passed, she asked her ex-husband why he called her. Cao immediately asked if she had sent the demon to him. Lily replied that she really did it. Then the boy asked if the ominous nails were also her work. He was very angry with the girl, but she glanced at him in surprise and asked what kind of ominous nails he had. Ning Tianlin realized that it looked like the ominous nails were given to him by his mistress to set the seal. Lily suddenly laughed and said that he had some business to attend to. His wife and mistress want to harm him. Cao looked down and said that it was okay, but he would never have thought that Lily would want to harm him. Suddenly, the girl began to approach him and found herself very close. When she approached, she hit the man on the cheek. It was a very strong slap. The old man and the boy watched what was happening. The girl exclaimed that she only wanted him to return home. Maybe he would have returned to her when his money ran out and those girls left him. They would earn money again, well then he would only be hers. The guy lowered his head and said that she was right. Cao turned to the master and said that he would not destroy this demon. Ning Tianlin thought that this was some kind of third-rate melodrama. At night, he will sneak here and kill the demon with his own hands to complete the task. The guy hugged Lily and asked her for forgiveness, since it was all his fault. It's a pity that as soon as the money runs out, she will have to suffer with him. The girl replied that she had followed him for 18 years and was not afraid of difficulties. The main thing was that he was with her again. The old man looked into Mr. Cao's eyes and asked if he wanted his wife to die. Then, the guy turned to the master and asked what he meant. The old man replied that there are two types of demons, the demon of happiness and the demon of failure. His wife summoned the demon of bad luck. The demon's appetite will become greater and greater. Sooner or later, he will eat his wife, and after that, he will simply kill her. Cao shouted to the master that he must save his wife. The old man asked the guy not to worry, because his wife must have a demon card that is connected with his life. The man explained that if he burns this card, then everything will be fine with his wife. The woman approached the guy and said that she really carries this card with her. She took it out and extended it towards the boy. The old man asked to burn it immediately. A dark monster appeared in front of them. He was very creepy and unpleasant. Ning Tianlin realized that this baby was the demon that was summoned by Cao Dafa's wife. They began to look towards the monster. Lily looked at him in fear. A small black imp looked at them slyly and maliciously. He was wearing that guy's beads. Lily somehow perked up. She seemed to be filled with some kind of energy. Ning Tianlin thought to himself that his wife and this demon seemed to be related. She feels his presence very well. Cao took out a lighter and brought it to this card. The fire was already very close and the map was slowly beginning to smolder. The fire began to burn stronger and stronger. The edge of the map was already gradually flaring up. But suddenly, Cao's wife came up and hit him on the head. The guys looked at what was happening in great surprise. It was very interesting. The card flew far to the side. Mr. Cao didn't have time to do anything. The little imp ran to the side. The old man exclaimed that it was necessary to catch up with him. In the direction he ran to, there was a toilet. The toilet door quickly opened. This amulet in the form of an imp slipped through this door and ended up next to the toilet. The water in the toilet began to bubble. Apparently, this little imp jumped straight into the toilet. The old man exclaimed that he was careless and allowed him to escape. Ning Tianlin thought that if he flushed the card in the toilet, he wouldn't be able to burn it. The boy realized that this demon was very smart. The old man walked up to the toilet and exclaimed that he had caught it. He told the evil creature that he would not be able to escape. The old man wanted him dead. That ominous card was in the old man's hands. It glowed yellow in his hand. But suddenly, yellow lightning struck the old man in the back. He didn't even have time to look back. He came even closer to the toilet and tried to do something, but the bright light enveloped him completely. The demon began to scream, a terrible scream, that he would kill him. His teeth were sharp and his eyes glowed yellow. The old man asked the boy to help him. He sealed it in its true form. Ning Tianlin thought that after all, he was the one who called him, so he should help. The old man took the demon by the throat with one hand and the head with the other. He tried to bite him on the hand. The old man held him as tightly as possible to the floor. The demon didn't stop growling at him. Then the old man raised it as high as possible without letting it slip out of his hands. Ning Tianlin was already coming to help. He began to use his power, and the demon scattered into small pieces throughout the room. Cao began to ask what just happened. The boy replied that nothing had happened. The problem had already been solved. Ning Tianlin told Cao that Goa would handle the rest, but he had to go. The old man thought to himself that this guy killed him with one blow, and his dagger was very unusual. Plus, this guy has yin-yang eyes. Old man Shui thought that this guy was terrible. Ning Tianlin threw him some kind of pill and asked him to eat it. He explained that it would be useful for him. Let him consider this payment for help. They figured out feng shui, so that he asks to be taken back, he needs to buy a house. Mr. Cao was surprised and immediately agreed. The old man could not understand what kind of tablet it was. He exclaimed that he felt young and healthy again. Meanwhile, Ning Tianlin received a call from someone. When he answered the call, he was quite surprised. Mr. Cao asked him what happened. The boy replied that he had urgent matters to attend to, and he was asked to go with his parents to look at houses and ask Gawa to check them for feng shui. Once he finds the right one, he asks to buy it without worrying about the price. A woman sat on the floor and said that she had already given them 640,000 yuan and paid off all her father's debts. She asked them to leave, but the guys replied that this money was not enough for them. There are still many thousands of yuan left. He explained. What was written in black and white? If they don't pay back the money within 6 hours, the amount owed will double. Before 11 o'clock, the amount of debt was 640,000 yuan, and now it is already 11 o'clock in 5 minutes, and that 1,280,000 yuan. The girl exclaimed that her father only borrowed 5,000 yuan from them, and now they are demanding much more than 1 million. She called them scammers. How can they be such scammers? Why are they demanding so much more money than her father owes? Then the bandit said that she should not call them deceivers, or she's going to call the police. They asked to think carefully before doing this. The girl looked in their direction with tears in her eyes. The guy said that in any case, since she was able to find that money, she would be able to find it a second time. He looked at her cleavage and said that if he doesn't find the money, then let him compensate in another way. The second guy hit him on the head from behind. Then he asked him what he was doing. The guy asked if he was tired of living. Who allowed him to touch her? The girl said that they had already received a lot. Why can't they just let her father go? Another guy entered the room and said that there is never too much money. The girl said that Wang Nan could not get her and therefore deliberately lured her father into a trap. The guy asked me to stop talking nonsense. Since he found out that she hooked up with Ning Tianlin, he is no longer interested in her. Of course, only if she is not going to pay with her body. One of their guys fell to the floor. Some powerful force threw him to the side. The guys immediately turned to the door. Who could do this to their friend? Ning Tianlin appeared at the door. He asked if they had called him. The guy smiled and exclaimed that the girl's lover had come. Has he mustered up the courage? One of the bandits pointed a gun at the boy and asked him to pay money. Ning Tianlin looked at him with a creepy look. His eyes sparkled with green light. He decided to wait a few seconds and began to count. The guy's weapon was already approaching him. He tried to hold on for a few more seconds. Ning Tianlin was already close to the enemy. And only in the 3rd second did he come up to him and grab him by the throat with his hand. With his other hand, he threw his weapon aside. The weapon flew to the floor and rolled across the floor with a roar. The guys watched what was happening with great surprise. The girl opened her mouth in amazement. They didn't think the boy would be so brave and strong. They began to call him, stopping him. But the boy did not let go of his hand, continuing to hold the guy's neck. Ning Tianlin exclaimed that they should just try to stop him. He was waiting for their decision. When the girl turned to him, the boy asked him to wait outside the door and said that he would come soon. The girl asked Ning Tianlin whether she should call the police. The boy replied that it was not necessary. He asked the girl not to worry and promised that everything would be fine with him. Ning Tianlin asked the guys if they were money lenders. He asked how much blood was already on their hands. One of the guys raised the bat over his head and it ended up in the boy's face. The guy was very surprised that his iron pipe was bent on Ning Tianlin's neck. The boy clenched his fist and began to approach the enemy at breakneck speed. He turned out to be next to him and hit his head with his fist as hard as he could. The enemy immediately flew to the side and fell head down. He was lying on the floor in a pool of blood. Another of the guys asked his guys not to make so much noise. He looked towards the boy. Then he turned to him and said that he did not expect the guy to own military techniques. Ning Tianlin realized that he was their boss. The guy asked not to look down on him. He explained that he was from Kangmen. He received a genetically modified drug. Ning Tianlin asked the system if that shady guy didn't invent this sect to deceive him. But what is a genetically modified medicine? The system responded that this was a pathetic trick. The enemy began to attack the boy. Ning Tianlin prepared to attack. For a moment, I think he put his knee forward. He clenched his fists and approached the guy, after which he raised his knee to the opponent's head and delivered a powerful blow. The guy fell to the floor, and hitting his head, many teeth flew out of his mouth. Ning Tianlin accelerated to strike him again, but the guy rose to his feet. He began to growl, showing his holes in his mouth. He was very angry and upset. The guy behind him was very surprised by what was happening. He opened his eyes in amazement. He was very scared when the boy began to approach him. Ning Tianlin grabbed his face with one hand. He squeezed his face as hard as he could. The boy asked him to be a little quieter. He pressed his finger to his mouth. Ning Tianlin exclaimed that Shu Yinga was standing outside the door and asked not to scare her. Meanwhile, the girl was really behind the door and listening to what was happening there. When he approached the girl, she looked at him wondering how everything went. The boy exclaimed that everything was ready. The girl began to ask him if he was hurt. Shu Yina blushed a little and pressed her arms to her chest. She exclaimed that she was very glad that he was not hurt. Ning Tianlin explained to the girl that her father was severely beaten, and if she went to the hospital, they would call the police. He has a personal doctor and will patch up her father. Shu Yina immediately agreed. She said that she didn't even know how to thank him. If it weren't for him, she doesn't know what she would have done. She works very hard for her father, and he loves gambling and is now deeply in debt because of it. Her mother even threatened him with suicide, but it was all to no avail and she no longer cared either. But he is her father, and as soon as he called her, she could not refuse help. Ning Tianlin asked her not to cry and said that he would help her father give up gambling. The girl was very surprised whether he would really help him. The boy laughed and replied that of course he would help because he was her father, and her father means his father. After the boy's words, Shu Yina blushed and lowered her head down. She was very embarrassed. Ning Tianlin laughed, holding his head, and said that he just blurted out without thinking. Suddenly, a bell rang in his pocket, so loud that the girl got scared. The boy picked up the phone and asked what happened. The sister asked her brother why he was so angry. He said nothing, and asked if they had any problems buying the house. The girl replied that they chose a house, and Uncle Shui helped evaluate feng shui. Doesn't he want to go back and see? It's the first time she's seen such a beautiful house. The girl explained to her brother that there were no problems yet. The brother replied that if there are no problems, then he resets it. They said goodbye abruptly, and the boy quickly turned off the phone. My sister wondered what important business he had there that made him so worried. The boy also became embarrassed and laughed, and told Shu Yina that it was his sister who called. He blushed a little and looked at the girl and asked if she agreed. Shu Yina looked up at him and asked what she agreed to. The boy came closer to her. He was behind her and wanted to put his hand on her head. He began to explain that he was talking about her father, but his phone suddenly rang again. The girl was again frightened by this loud sound. Ning Tianlin was already very angry and asked his dad what was the matter. The father explained that his sister forgot to tell him the cost and wanted to voice it, but his son cut him off and asked him not to worry about the price. Let him just tell Ning Tianxin to withdraw the money from his card. The boy explained to his father that he was very busy here and said goodbye to him. He quickly hung up, as two people had already prevented him from communicating with this girl. Ning Tianlin became very nervous and threw his phone out the window. He put his hand on the girl's shoulder and said that now no one would bother them. The boy came closer to the girl and began to hug her. They were both embarrassed, but eventually they hugged and moved closer to each other. After everything, he exclaimed that he wanted this calm to continue. Well, some other issues needed to be resolved. The system understood that he was talking about Kangmen, although he does not know what kind of genetically modified medicine this is, but when he fought with this crazy man, his strength increased dramatically. This medicine can enhance his fighting strength, so he is going to visit this Kangmen. Meanwhile, a girl was watching the guy. She pointed the machine gun at him and began to take aim, after which the girl pulled the trigger and the bullet flew towards the man. Someone shouted that there was a killer somewhere. Is there really a sniper there? The girl stood with a rifle in her hands and looked ahead. Her gaze was stern and serious. She said that if they want to blame someone, then they should blame themselves for provoking the Kongmen people. She stood firmly on her own 2 feet. But suddenly, the girl heard something. She immediately became alert and reached out with her hand to her pistol, which was in a holster on her belt. She managed to get it without letting go of the machine gun from her other hand. She managed to shoot, but someone's hand unexpectedly caught this ominous bullet. Ning Tianlin looked into the girl's eyes. He entered the room and exclaimed to her that they had finally met again. The girl began to shoot him with a pistol many times, but the boy caught with his hand every bullet fired from the barrel of the pistol. Ning Tianlin said that this gun was useless against him and asked the girl to surrender. He wants to ask her about genetically modified medicine. The girl wanted to jump out of the window and hurried to fly up to the windowsill. She quickly jumped out so that the boy did not have time to catch up with her. The girl realized that this was the guy who was staring at her on the train. How did he know about the genetically modified Kangmen medicine? Kangmen is a secret organization that has existed for several hundred years. This is the largest gang in the world. But few people know that 10 years ago, Kangmen founded Neimen, People in Neiman are being injected with so-called genetic medicine, but the drug administered had a high mortality rate, so now there are not even 100 people in Neiman. After the successful administration of the drug, the body's abilities increased many times over, for which such altered people were called superhumans. The girl didn't stop at just the gun. She began to use sharp-edged weapons, but Ning Tianlin grabbed it with his teeth and then squeezed it with both hands and threw it away from him. A very powerful fight took place. The girl flew to the side. She finally fell to the floor on one knee. The boy began to come closer to her. He asked, looking down at her, what she would tell him now. The girl was sitting on her knees, slightly wounded. She looked at him with an angry look, but she wasn't going to give up. She realized that the boy had driven her into a corner. The system said that this girl was going to commit suicide by swallowing poison. Ning Tianlin immediately reached out his hand to her face and covered her mouth. He came even closer to her. When the boy pulled out the pill, he asked if she had gone crazy. Why does she want to die from poisoning? The girl exclaimed that he has every opportunity to kill her. Why is he hesitating? Ning Tianlin replied that he had not yet found out the necessary information, so he could not let her die now. Simply put, she is a killing machine. The system said that it would be good if he could control her mind. Ning Tianlin was very surprised. Did he take Gov's mind controller? If he mastered it, he could hypnotize her. The boy asked the system how many points he had now. The system replied that it was 5,000. Ning Tianlin was surprised where there was so much. The system explained that these points were obtained after establishing a business empire, as well as after completing a hidden task about becoming a man. As his combat strength increases, more and more hidden missions will appear. Ning Tianlin exclaimed that if the system is looking for a reason to give him energy points, then let him just say so. The system asked if the owner wanted to spend 500 points on mastering mind control. Then suddenly, the gentleman was told that trouble had come. They had lost contact with Jian Jin, who had only recently entered Neiman. The gray-haired old man replied that he saw on the news that the target had already been killed. He asked if she had lost contact with them during the mission. The guy replied that everything was so. The man asked him to quickly send people to investigate and find her alive or dead. The guy immediately obeyed. The gray-haired old man explained that it was impossible for information about the aliens to leak out. Ning Tianlin said that if it weren't for the mind control and his own experience, he would definitely think that this woman was crazy. The genetic drug was found on an alien spaceship. If they don't die after taking the drug, they can become a superhuman Kangmen. This setting is like science fiction. The system exclaimed that she had spoken the truth. The spaceship of the alien Mona crashed. Due to power outages and electromagnetic interference, she fell to the ground. Ning Tianlin asked if he could use that same drug. The system responded that the things he could get by exchanging energy points were much better than some third-rate drug. The system asked why he suddenly stopped. They heard some kind of scream in front of them. The guy said that he supported her, but why doesn't she have money? Ning Tianlin stared ahead. The man asked the boy who he was. He stood opposite the girl and held her hand roughly. Ning Tianlin greeted the man and said that he was Shu Yina's boyfriend. He could just call him Ning. The man was very surprised and immediately began to smile back at the boy. He said that Ina mentioned him. He thought she was lying to him when she told him how wonderful her boyfriend was. Ning Tianlin replied that the girl told him about his problems, so he prepared a gift for him. The boy took out the contract and showed it to the man. He explained to his uncle that if he signed it, he would give him 500 million and send him to the casino city. The man began to tremble and immediately snatched the contract from the boy. He hurried to sign the paper. Shu Yina asked the boy what it was. Ning Tianlin asked her to calm down and just trust him. Ning Tianlin told the man that he would escort him to the plane. The man immediately agreed and went with him. The boy and Shu Ying accompanied her father to the airport. They looked out the window, following the plane with their gaze. The girl asked Ning Tianlin if anything bad had happened. The boy asked her not to worry and explained that he had some kind of plan. Suddenly his gaze fell on a man. He felt that this person had an unusual aura. The system explained to the boy that he was from Kangmen and must be looking for that girl. After he gave out all the information, he knocked her out. Has she still not contacted her organization? Shu Yina asked the boy what happened. The boy turned to her. Ning Tianlin replied that he had one thing to do, and she could return home for now. He was going to surprise her in the evening. Ning Tianlin stood around the bend and began to watch that guy. He followed him and headed towards the alley where the man had gone. He decided to hurry, as the system told him. He continued to watch the man. The boy went outside and looked around the corner. He tried not to miss the man, but apparently someone felt it. The boy's gaze immediately fell to the side. The man wanted to hit him in the back of the head, but Ning Tianlin dodged the blow with lightning speed. The enemy gave the boy a contemptuous look. He began to approach him. He was already very close and tripped the boy. The man staggered but did not fall. He was very strong and strong. He clenched his fist in front of his face, and she looked at the boy with a rough, impudent look. Ning Tianlin was told by the man that he was, as expected, unusually strong. The man moved his eyebrows to his nose and said that it seemed that it was because of him that they had lost contact with Zhen Zhen. The boy apologized to him and exclaimed that this girl was the first to attack him. The man said that he is stronger than her, but those who go against Kangmen and Nuimen will face death. Ning Tianlin smiled and replied that he doesn't even know who will actually die today. When the man began to approach the boy, his phone suddenly rang. He picked up the phone and asked what happened. His view changed after this conversation. He asked if Zhen Zhen had really messed with her head. Ning Tianlin asked him if they would fight again. He doesn't mind doing the world a favor and killing one bandit. The man asked what his goal was. Ning Tianlin asked just to help him convey the words. Otherwise, that same Zhen Zhen is not very talkative. The man looked into his eyes and asked what words he wanted to convey. The boy said that in the future he, Ning Tianlin, will visit the head of Kangmen. The man replied that he understood and would be waiting for his visit. The system told the boy that he was happy with this Kangman. Ning Tianlin replied that they are known all over the world. As long as the cops cover them, they hit the jackpot. They also have many high-class craftsmen. It would be sad not to include them in your business empire, but now he needs to think about an evening surprise. The boy was thinking about his girlfriend, and he led her to a tall building that rose to the very sky. Shu Yina was wearing a beautiful evening dress. She asked if this was the place. The boy said that it was a surprise, and he asked her to go to the casino and enjoy earning big money. What to play? Perhaps it is better to play guessing the bet. The girl wished him good luck, and she asked not to lose their money under any circumstances. Ning Tianlin took the chip in his hands and asked the girl to look at him. The boy began to play. He asked the system if it had an item that would allow him to see through it. The system replied that it is, an apple of insight that is worth 300 points. The boy immediately agreed to exchange this apple, and so he received the apple of insight. The girl who was a judge at the casino said that the bets had already been made. Ning Tianlin fixed his gaze in front of him. Everything around him began to glow with a transparent golden light. He tried to see what was under the overturned glass and saw cubes. The boy was very pleased. Everything worked out and he sees these cubes. The girl asked him why he suddenly froze. Ning Tianlin replied that it was nothing and it was their turn to choose. The girl grabbed a lock of her hair with her hand. She realized that there was a large number there. Scarlet blood suddenly gushed out of the boy's nose. He blushed and his eyes bulged. He finally made up his mind and exclaimed that he was betting on a big number. He rolled 2 4s and a 6. Luck is very good. It's better to set a small goal for yourself and win 100 million. The girl standing in front of them was very surprised. One of the visitors said that this guy won a lot and he saw it with his own eyes. How he started playing with 1 yuan, but ended up winning several tens. The guy said that this was simply incredible luck. The casino owner was also very surprised by the boy's luck. She asked Ning Tianlin to place his bet. The boy moved all his chips and exclaimed that he was betting everything. The casino owner was even more surprised and thought that he could tell by sound, but he was so young. The girl decided that since he won so much money, it looked like he would have to use a backup plan. The girl conveyed to her bodyguard via communication that the situation had changed, and they were moving on to plan B. And once again, the cubes were under the flask. They were shuffled and thrown onto the table. The cubes glowed with various numbers. Ning Tianlin moved his eyebrows to his nose and began to watch carefully. The boy exclaimed, looking at the girl, that she had replaced these cubes. The other guy thought about how he could find out about this. Are the Doyle clan casinos really cheating? The owner of the establishment closed her eyes and told the gentleman that he should not talk without evidence. She explained that they could sue him for slander. Ning Tianlin looked sternly into her eyes and asked her to shut up. He picked up the cube and turning it, showed the proof in his palm. He looked sternly at the girl and did not let go of the cube from his hand. Casino visitors looked at what was happening and were very surprised. Everyone was waiting for the outcome of this event. Then the girl began to call security. She said that some person was rowdy here. The security immediately began to run towards the boy. There were several armed people. They surrounded him and told the gentleman that they were asking him to leave the establishment, since he was not welcome here. Ning Tianlin asked why they suddenly became agitated so quickly. He turned to the girl and said that her dad should be on the 6th floor in the VIP room. He asked her to come to him and said that he would come soon. The girl replied that she would wait for him there. One of the guards pointed a gun at him and asked if he could hear him. He asked the boy to blame himself in this case. Ning Tianlin looked at him with a stern look. He grabbed the man by the throat and began smashing his head into the wall. The boy exclaimed that they should resolve the issue with him, but not touch his girlfriend. The armed guy started shooting at Ning Tianlin. The boy was ready for this. He stood very calmly and with his strength pushed many bullets away from him. The owner of the premises asked, grinning, who dared to oppose the Doyle clan. She wanted this boy dead, and he stood calmly and asked if they had finished. Ning Tianlin exclaimed that now it was his turn and looked sternly into the girl's eyes. Her look also changed. She did not expect such a turn of events. The boy began to destroy one guard at a time. He used his power against them with lightning speed. The boy grabbed the pistol from the guys and began to pull the bolt while pulling the trigger. The next bullet flew towards the girl. She stuck out her finger to stop the bullet. The boy exclaimed that the Doyle clan is not so simple. He lowered the gun down. He told the girl that just because dealing with the consequences would be difficult, he did not want to fight. Well, if you look at it this way, she also has a superpower. Ning Tianlin said that he is not superhuman, he is better. The boy began to fly up to the girl to strike, but she put her hand forward again. She wanted to attack him, but the boy dodged in time by squatting down. A black haze appeared around the girl. It came from her hands. The black haze was moving closer and closer to the boy. He became alert and stood up. Ning Tianlin felt that there was little air. His head felt like it was being squeezed. Does she really want to create a vacuum around him? The boy fell to his knees. The girl continued to make some movements with her hands, as if she wanted to strangle him from afar. She knitted her eyebrows toward her nose and continued to clench her fists. But the boy got up from his knees and jumped up and raised his weapon above the girl's head. She put her hands forward, raising them up as if putting up some kind of protection. Ning Tianlin jumped as high as possible again. He had a sharp dagger in his hands. The girl did not stop defending herself. Her defenses shrouded her in dark light. Ning Tianlin tried to dodge the dark ball around him. The girl began to scream and flew far back. The boy skillfully dealt with her. He decided to find Shu Yinggu first, and then find the person in charge of the casino. It turns out that this girl was not the owner of this establishment. She simply created the illusion of it. Ning Tianlin found Shu Yinggu. Her uncle was next to her. The boy asked him how the games were going. Uncle sighed and replied that he was unlucky today and lost all his money. Well, everything is fine. If he gives him a little more, he will return everything to him from the winnings. Ning Tianlin looked at his uncle sternly. He pulled out a gun and replied that he was sorry, but according to the contract he had already signed, he had to kill him. Uncle was very surprised by this. He saw the barrel of a gun in front of him. The uncle began to scream and asked the boy to spare him. There was fear and horror in his eyes. He began to sweat and turn white with indignation and nightmare. Fear filled him. He was very scared. The man seemed to be on some kind of bridge. In front of him was some huge bull with a ring in his nose. He asked the newcomer to hurry up. The uncle fell to the floor and decided that it was a ghost in front of him. He started screaming even louder. Then this ghost came closer to him and said that if he hesitated, he would vaporize him with a whip. The man seemed to be in some kind of terrible, creepy dream, but it was reality. The guy exclaimed that he was accused unfairly. He stood before the terrible monster and his guards on his knees. He explained to them that his son-in-law killed him, and he never acted vilely. Ning Tianlin chuckled. He stared at his uncle as he put his plan into action. His uncle looked back at him with a frightened look. He couldn't understand what was happening to him. He looked at the boy and asked if he had died too. Then the strange man who was sitting on the throne exclaimed that this was outrageous. How he talks to Lord Ning? Ning Tianlin said that he did not want to kill him, but it was better to end everything at once. He is still addicted to gambling, which has always broken Shu Ying's heart. The uncle fell to his knees in front of the boy and said that he would not do it again. He asked for mercy and called him Excellency. Then the bearded man replied that he was lucky that Lord Ning stood up for him. Therefore, he will be freed from the hell of slanderers, the mountain of swords on which sinners are thrown, and from torture in oil cauldrons. But for gambling, he will be punished with the Stonemill. The man asked to be taken to the Stonemill hell. The guy began to scream and ask His Excellency not to do this. The uncle shouted that he repented of everything and would not do this again. When a Stonemill was chasing him, the man began to run as fast as he could. He ran away as quickly as possible and screamed in fear and horror. His face changed color from red to green to yellow. Ning Tianlin looked at the guy and asked him not to shout anymore. He explained that his uncle had already returned. The man grabbed his heart and asked in horror if this was all not a dream. The boy replied that next time he would not be able to wake up from this dream. Shu Yinga begged so much that he told the Lord of Hell to resurrect him. But if he gambles again, he will die immediately. The uncle exclaimed that he did not want this. The boy replied that this was very good and Shu Yinga was waiting for him for dinner, and he still had things to do. The system told Ning Tianlin that even if he killed him, this girl would not abandon him. So why use a mind controller to create an artificial world? The boy replied to the system that a bachelor would not understand this. He approached the door, near which the guards stood. One of them opened the door for Ning Tianlin and asked him to come in. A guy was sitting at the table in front of him, who told the gentleman that he had done everything as he ordered. The clan will not know anything about what happened in the casino. Ning Tianlin asked him to continue working as usual. He will help him take the post of head of the Doyle clan. The guy sat down on one knee in front of him and, calling him master, agreed. In front of him was K. Payne, third son of the Doyle clan. Ning Tianlin thought that he was now controlling his mind. Clan Doyle would be the first powerful force overseas that he would subjugate. Shu Yina called the boy amazing. After his father faints from a toy gun, he doesn't look like himself. Just now he passed by the casino and didn't even look at it. Ning Tianlin replied that he is amazing because he is her boyfriend. The girl asked. Not to embarrass her, the boy suggested taking a walk around Chinatown, just the two of them. He heard that there is a holiday there today. The girl, of course, agreed and got into the car. They rushed forward into the bright, spacious city. Bright lights illuminated the streets. They approached a table that was located under a tree. But suddenly the boy heard something. He turned his head to the side. Shu Yina asked him what happened. Ning Tianlin replied that everything was fine. But the boy realized that this killer girl was there again. The girl hid behind the wall and also realized that it was him. She didn't expect him to come to Chinatown. She had to report this to the boss. Zhen asked her comrade to quickly go to the boss and tell him that the person mentioned in the report had appeared in Chinatown. Ning Tianlin asked the girl not to complicate things. She should just take him to him. Zhen did not listen to him but tried to attack the enemy. She threw a sharp weapon at him, but the boy caught the tip with 2 fingers. Then the girl began to run away with lightning speed. She ran as fast as she could. She wanted to jump through the window, but the boy quickly caught up with her. Ning Tianlin grabbed the girl by the leg and began to hold her so that she could not escape. The boy held her with all his might, but she tried to get out of his hands. She made an effort and somehow pulled her leg free. Zhen gave a push and jumped to her feet. She used all her strength to free herself. The girl directed some bright blue circles towards the boy. She looked at him with a strange, thoughtful look. The boy decided to come closer to her. She didn't look away from him. Ning Tianlin thought that this girl was too stubborn and it was useless to use the haram controller. She wants to commit suicide again? The boy kept asking to be taken to Kangmen. They headed towards the building. When they came close, the Kangmen people began to stop them. They explained that even if he forced Zhen to betray Kongmen and show him the way, they would not let him through. The guy overwhelmed everyone and said that he was here to talk about cooperation and asked not to stop him. Someone appeared behind him and called him an impudent man. He asked to fight first. The system asked the boy to pay attention to the fact that he was wearing combat equipment. Ning Tianlin replied that it seems they also have a lot of good things. The enemy clenched his fist. He was ready to attack. His muscles were tense and his eyes were fixed on the boy. He was preparing to rush towards his opponent to attack and kill him. He began to approach faster and faster, exposing his fists. The guy was already very close to him, but Ning Tianlin blocked with both hands, and with all his might he began to push his opponent away from him. He exclaimed that he had finally met a strong opponent. He has exceptional physical attributes such that he is stronger than him. The boy thought that he also had fighting abilities, and in principle he is not far behind this guy. He gathered all his strength and began to approach the enemy. Ning Tianlin flew into the air as high as possible and clenched his fists as he approached him. He tried to strike and hit the guy right in the chest. The enemy managed to block the blow. Then the boy was too persistent. He stood firmly on his feet and prepared to strike the enemy. He pulled himself together and began to use force. There were clouds of smoke in front of him. Ning Tianlin did not see him through them and asked him to come out to him. He said that he knew that the guy was not dead. Then the enemy came out of the thick white smoke and said that he was good and worth his effort. The guy pulled out a huge heavy sword and looked at his enemy with an angry look. The system told the boy that the falcon knife was a low-class military weapon. It increases physical strength by 100 points. Ning Tianlin decided to use centipede fusion. When the enemy began to approach him with a sword, the boy prepared to repel the attack. His eyes changed color, and when the enemy approached him, it was like an explosion. The boy began to turn into a huge beast. Horns grew from his head and he began to moo. The enemy did not expect to see a bull in front of him. He was very surprised at what appeared before him. It was a huge, angry bull. The horns were very sharp and thick, and the eyes glowed red. The blast line was very long, and white smoke enveloped everything around. The enemy said that the boy turned into a bull, and he has great power. He asked if Ning Tianlin was not a person. The boy came closer to him and, placing his foot on his chest, replied that he was not a person and that all of them were not people. The system informed the owner that from today, he must create the largest non-state power on Earth within a year. There will be a huge reward for this. Ning Tianlin replied that although he really wanted to join Kangmen, but establishing a major power in just 1 year was too fast. But the system explained that if he failed, he would spend a lot of points. Ning Tianlin walked to the main door, and the person in front of it began to stop him. He explained that the boy knocked out the elders and stole fusion combat equipment. When the head finishes receiving guests, he will take care of him too. Ning Tianlin replied that he actually came to talk about cooperation, and, having hit the guy, began to go inside. He was asked to leave the premises. Ning Tianlin exclaimed that he had finally met him and asked if he was the head of Kangmen. The man replied that the head was not here. He only temporarily helps him with business. A gray-haired old man stood in front of him. He told the boy that he shouldn't have a fever. Otherwise, it will be very easy for him to get burned. The old man took his weapon in his hands and came close to the guy. He tried to stab Ning Tianlin. His bat was already approaching the boy's face. The old man waved his stick as hard as he could in front of his face, but the boy dodged. There was a strong explosion again. A lot of white smoke enveloped everything around. Ning Tianlin took out his huge, sharp sword and began to defend himself. He swung his sword to stop the blow from the thick wooden bat. His sword was right in front of her. The weapon rested against the thick metal of the sword. The boy's sword began to split into pieces. First it cracked and then shattered. The old man was pushed aside. Ning Tianlin also jumped back. He looked at his sword and was very surprised that only a piece remained in his hand. The old man approached the boy and said that he was very strong. He asked if the boy wanted to join Kangmen. Ning Tianlin was very surprised by this question. After all, this is what he wanted. The boy answered the old man that he had come to become the head of the Kangmen. He threw his weapon up and caught it with his hand, gripping it tightly. Ning Tianlin made a sharp movement with his weapon, and a blue wave flew towards the old man. The gray-haired old man jumped to the side, but he staggered a little. The old man grabbed his weapon and began to defend himself. He was a little scared of the boy's strength. Ning Tianlin approached him and tried to strike again, but the old man fought off his saber with his stick. The boy did not stop holding his saber on his opponent's weapon. His weapon gradually began to turn into useless metal. The old man could not understand what was happening. His hand loosened and he dropped his stick. The weapon flew down, and the boy remained with his sharp saber. He grabbed his opponent's stick in his hand. It turns out that the old man's sword was hidden under it. The enemy was furious at the boy's impudence. He did not expect that the enemy would leave him without a sword. The old man began to use all his abilities and reached out to the guy with a fiery hand. He was completely on fire and did not stop trying to hit the enemy. The boy managed to dodge every ray of flame that was aimed at him. He dodged like lightning. Ning Tianlin decided to use his other power. It glowed with bright blue rays and directed them towards the old man. The old man's eyes glowed with a red fiery light. He cast an angry glance at the boy. The old man began to approach him using fiery force. The boy moved towards him, and their forces mixed. Two guys appeared at the door. They were very surprised by what was happening here. They began to call their deputy, but the gray-haired old man looked at them menacingly and asked them not to interfere because they were not his rivals. Ning Tianlin never stopped using his abilities. Its blue haze enveloped the boy completely. The guy thought that this old man had suddenly learned his techniques so quickly. They continued to fight and suddenly jumped away from each other. A bright white circle appeared in front of them, which seemed to move them away from each other. The old man laughed and said that although he doesn't know why he should become the head of the Kangmen, they can't rely on force alone. Martial arts are used to defend against enemies, and virtue is used to serve people. With the help of force, he can easily destroy everything in his path and force people to obey him through fear. But he will not be able to achieve sincere respect and veneration. The system told the boy that only the weak calm themselves this way. Only with pure power will he be the ruler of the world. Ning Tianlin replied that he thought there was some truth in his words too. Ning Tianlin told the old man that he had just reported that the head had left. He asked where and said that he had business with him. The old man replied that he had gone to the Pacific Ocean. Even though he broke in here and harmed innocent people, he has a space ring, and his strength surpasses that of ordinary people. All of their genetically modified strength-enhancing drugs were obtained from a spaceship that fell outside the Pacific Ocean. They found an object that looked like a tablet with alien symbols. After deciphering the data, the head discovered that it was a list of items. They contained rare items, but since they were hidden too deeply, they missed them. The head went to the Pacific Ocean to find them. Ning Tianlin was very surprised. He exclaimed that it was very interesting, and then he would go there too. The old man replied that he could not stop him, but he also could not let the guest go like that. First, he suggested eating in a relaxed atmosphere. The boy was glad that he became a guest. The old man explained that Kangmen respects strong people. He has a feeling that he will be able to say no to Kangmen, to bring amazing change to the world. Ning Tianlin crossed his arms over his chest and smiled, and replied that what he said was true. He gave the old man a weapon and said that this sword would be better than his previous sword. The old man bowed before him and thanked the boy. He offered to conduct it. The system told Ning Tianlin that he sold his equipment to Zhen Zhen and bought a sword. The system explained that this was very stupid, but the boy replied that this deputy was a very good person and he gave them the coordinates. The system said that this old man is really generous and also strong. The boy asked if the red dot in front of them meant a spaceship. The system told him that it was so, but why doesn't he feel the energy of the people in the submarine? Didn't they go on a spaceship? The pressure in the deep sea is so high, how did they get out of it? The system responded that despite the fact that the spaceship crashed, it was surrounded by an energy shield that could last for the next 100 years. Protecting it from sea influences, the boy exclaimed that then they too would go. There is still oxygen left on the ship, you can move freely. Should an exchange platform accept such junk? Once they take the things, they will sell this spaceship. Then the boy heard cries for help from afar. Someone asked to help him. There was a guy lying on the floor. Ning Tianlin walked up to him and wanted to give him a pill, but the system exclaimed that this was a waste of time. Ning Tianlin replied that if he could not save him, then his death would be on his conscience. The guy said that he knew about the location of their leader and asked what happened here and where the others were. The guy replied that they found the egg, but it escaped. They separated but did not expect that it would suddenly run away from them. The boy asked Ning Tianlin to be careful. Behind him was a snake. She approached them to sting them, but the guys instantly jumped aside. She began to open her mouth and approach them. The snake was huge and hissed at them incessantly. Ning Tianlin grabbed her throat with one hand. The snake's mouth was open. The boy looked into her mouth and saw very sharp teeth and a long tongue. His head began to hurt. The boy's look changed and he was very surprised by this. The system asked Ning Tianlin not to look into the snake's eyes. The boy did not stop holding his head. Ning Tianlin squeezed the snake in his hand even more tightly, but the snake turned around and bit him on the hand. His head was spinning and he couldn't understand what was happening. The system explained that this creature is called the afterlife snake. Its poison is a rare and valuable medicine that can enhance spiritual power. The venom of this snake can cause hallucinations in aliens, but in Earthlings, this venom causes souls to leave their bodies. Ning Tianlin asked to be returned to his body. He must deal with this snake. The system replied that he would have to pay 10,000 points. Does he still want the guy to return to his body? The boy was surprised that it was so expensive. The system explained that in such a trivial matter, he needed his help, and of course the price would be higher. It's simple. He can force the afterlife snake to open his third eye and look at him. Then he can return to his body. When the snake began to crawl away, he ran after it and asked not to run away. He found it strange that he couldn't catch her, and why she first bit him and then went on the run. The system advised him to look at it more carefully. When the boy began to look at the snake, he saw some kind of red thread on it and asked the system what it was. The system explained that this is the last magical weapon of endless death. After the death of the owner, the one who killed him will be bound until all energy is depleted. Ning Tianlin realized that the snake had bitten him on purpose. She wanted the guy to come out of his body and help her. He asked the snake why it ran away then. The system explained that the snake was saying that the boy might have misunderstood her and hurt her. Ning Tianlin said that then, after he helps her, she will become her pet, and he will be able to use her poison at his discretion. The system replied that it agreed. Then the boy asked the snake to heal him quickly. He looked into the snake's eyes. The guy who was on the ship asked him if he woke up. Ning Tianlin replied that he woke up and grabbed his head with his hand. Another guy saw a snake in front of him and was very scared. Ning Tianlin explained to him that he had tamed her and asked her not to be afraid. He asked which of the Kangmen had a weapon called Endless Death. The boy explained that this thing is very similar to a red thread. The guy began to think about what he was talking about. He said that he had not heard of such a thing, but he saw how the head of the clan wore a red thread on his wrist. The guy immediately got scared and asked if something had really happened to the head of the clan. The guy on the ship called Ning Tianlin to meet the others. When they approached, he asked what was wrong with the head. One of the people replied that he was bitten by that alien snake. One of them pointed to the snake and exclaimed that it was still here and so close to that man. Was it really he who ordered her to bite their head? The guy from the ship replied that it was not him, and he had just tamed her. The guy gave the command to kill him in order to avenge the head. Ning Tianlin told the guys that they used the black snake to seize power by killing the head, and now they're putting the blame on him. The guys got angry and exclaimed that he was talking nonsense. They decided to kill him for their leader. But when the guys approached the boy, he made a move with a deft movement of his hand. One by one, he hit the guys on the head and they screamed in pain. Another guy was hit and twisted by Ning Tianlin's powerful force. The boy picked him up by the collar and asked why they planned the murder of the head. When the guy began to deny, Ning Tianlin said that he had no patience to listen to his babble. Then the guy said that the genetically modified medicine and all sorts of research were in their hands. Therefore, they decided to seize the post of head. The elder brother deceived him by saying that the alien snake had the power to conquer the world, and that it could recognize its owner. Ning Tianlin asked the snake to look at him with his third eye so that he would wake up just like him. The guy he met on the ship said it wouldn't help at all. They sealed his body. Even if he wakes up, he won't live long. Then the boy took out his magic pill and asked what about it. He brought the pill to their head and put it in his mouth. After this, the boy asked his snake to look at him with its own eyes. The snake crawled as close as possible to the gray-haired man and looked intently into his eyes. When the man opened his eyes, he called the guy a traitor. His eyes sparkled blue. The man reached out, clenching his fist to punch the boy square in the face, but Ning Tianlin immediately dodged and hit him back. The man flew far to the side. The guy from the ship approached the head and asked him not to fight with this guy. He explained that this man had just saved him. The gray-haired man was very surprised. When Ning Tianlin flew towards him with another blow and the man very deftly dodged, he kept thinking that the boy was a traitor and tried to attack him. The guy again began to call his head, calming him down. The head flew to the side and grabbed his head. When he came to his senses, he laughed and apologized to him. He explained that he had just nearly died and his mind was going blank. Ning Tianlin replied that there was nothing wrong and he also fought. Since the issue has already been settled, he invites them to return. The old man agreed with them, and they slowly headed towards the exit. The guy from the ship held him, since the gray-haired man was still very weak. The boy explained to his leader that the guys from his team attacked him, and so they found themselves in a huge building. The head was asked to go inside. He gave the command to call all the high-level fighters, as he wants to arrange a public competition for Ning. When the gray-haired old man heard about this, he was very surprised and thought about it. But the head asked the old man to do so, so he says, he immediately agreed and did not argue. Ning Tianlin exclaimed that he somehow agreed too generously. He had come to take away his post. The man laughed and said that the position of head should be occupied by a talented person. He combines mercy and strength. If such a young hero inherits the post of head for his Kangmen, it will be happiness. But if he wants to become the head of Kangmen, then it is not enough to have the power to defeat him. He must have the strength to protect himself and the Kangmen. The boy exclaimed that he had everything that people wanted. The old man replied that then he would wait impatiently. The competition is scheduled for next Friday, and the other factions will also send their people to watch it. The boy exclaimed, looking into the old man's eyes, that he was also really looking forward to this. The gray-haired man asked them not to overdo it, and so the competition begins. Ning Tianlin decided to use the centipede fusion. In front of him stood the head of the Kongmen with his weapon in the form of a long, sharp stake. The head of the Kangmen stood opposite the boy. He was ready to repel the attack. Ning Tianlin rushed forward and deftly dodged the man's weapon. The boy managed to bow his head to repel the powerful blow of the enemy. He jumped as the man tried to thrust his spear into him. The old man looked at the boy carefully. He tried to see all his weaknesses. He struck again, but the boy dodged. It was not so easy to hit him. The white-haired old man exclaimed that he was really flexible and looked in his direction again. There was a lot of smoke around his weapon. White clouds rose higher and higher. Ning Tianlin thought that he shouldn't go ahead. We need to come up with a different approach. The boy began to figure out how to do everything right. He glanced to the side. The silver-haired old man's spear flew towards him. It was the tip of a spear. The boy put a block in front of him. Its metal began to repel the edge of the enemy's weapon. Ning Tianlin was surprised by this incredible strength. It's not for nothing that they say that its combat potential exceeds 1,000. The boy's eyebrows moved towards his nose. He clenched his teeth and looked forward. The man raised his spear and raised it above his head to deliver a blow to the enemy. Ning Tianlin dodged the blow again by moving his hands. The boy's power fell into the gray-haired old man's weapon. The man jumped to the side, but he did not let go of his spear. He was very strict and calm. The battle took place in huge white clouds of dust. Two strong men fought with all their might. The boy grabbed the silver-haired man's spear and began to pull it. The ground shook underfoot and stones flew to the sides. They were very strong and calm. The gray-haired old man changed his face and his eyes glowed blood red. He raised his spear as high above his head as possible and pointed it towards the enemy. He approached him, but Ning Tianlin did a flip and landed on the ground. He dodged the man's blow again. They looked into each other's eyes. The old man said that he had not felt such satisfaction for a long time. The boy replied, looking at him, that he was leading Kangmen with dignity. He looked intently into the man's eyes and added that he had already found a way to defeat him. He took his snake and gave it the command to move forward towards the enemy. The snake immediately jumped. The old man grabbed his spear and began to defend himself. He asked if the boy was thinking of using monsters to confuse him. The old man exclaimed that this was a pretty good attack and began to defend himself. He grabbed his weapon and jumped up, bending it like a spring. The old man was very cunning and brave. When he was on the ground, an explosion occurred. The snake opened its mouth and began to approach him faster and faster. The gray-haired man extended his weapon towards her and the snake swallowed him. The struggle continued for life and death. The old man was too strong for what I expected from such a brave opponent. Ning Tianlin took out his sharp dagger and walked towards the white-haired old man. The man immediately tried to repel the attack. He was not afraid of such an act from the guy. He tried to defend himself and tried to attack the boy without even thinking about giving up. Ning Tianlin prepared to repel the white-haired old man's attack. The enemy was already flying up to him, raising his weapon above his head. The battle continued and it was very interesting and exciting. The old man began to use his power in the form of white and black circles. He began to turn them, pointing them towards the boy. When the man waved his weapon, Ning Tianlin made a move and the old man began to fly to the side. He fell to the ground from a powerful blow from his opponent, after which he immediately rose to his feet. Ning Tianlin walked up to the man and exclaimed that he had suffered well and was admitting defeat. But the old man closed his eyes and, turning to the boy, replied that in fact he had lost. The guys around were very surprised. After all, the head of the clan looks like he can still fight. I just used the rules, but of course the head of the clan is stronger. However, even without rules, how could such a young man fight the head of the clan on equal terms? Ning Tianlin offered the enemy another fight. The old man replied that he would fight no more. In the end, every century gives birth to its heroes. Next, everyone gathers in the Hall of Fate. The old man said, looking at the boy, that then everything depended only on him. Ning Tianlin agreed with the clan head. He stood in the middle of the hall and addressed those present. The boy said that if they recognize him as the head of the clan, he will offer them conditions that they cannot refuse. One of the guys asked what other conditions were that could not be refused. He admitted that the boy is strong, but one cannot become the head of the Tsang clan only through strength. Then the boy offered them a flask with some kind of blue potion. The guys exclaimed that this was a genetic serum. Ning Tianlin told them that it was true and his serum was improved, without side effects. The guys were very surprised and asked if it was true. Isn't this man deceiving them? Ning Tianlin replied that in addition to the genetic serum, he would also create an exchange platform in the clan. Clan students will be able to exchange points for enhancing serums, as well as space rings and various treasures. The guys immediately started talking about how they wanted to get a ring of space and various treasures. Judging by the look of this guy, those around him decided that he was not deceiving them. The boy looked at them and asked if they agreed to recognize him as their head. The guys immediately shouted that if this was true, then of course they agreed. The others were happy about it too. But suddenly, one of them asked how they could be sure that he was telling the truth. Ning Tianlin suggested that he try it himself and find out. If he doesn't believe, he will be the first to introduce the advanced serum. The boy gave him a contemptuous look and asked if he was afraid. But the guy was brave and answered Ning Tianlin that he was not afraid and wanted to try. The guy squeezed his hand and was ready to take the serum to show his courage. Without thinking twice, the boy injected him with medicine. The guy glowed with some kind of blue light. "Is this all true?" He asked Ning Tianlin if this was all. The boy came up to him and grabbed his head. He looked him straight in the eyes. After that, he hit the boy on the head and dropped him to the floor. The guys were surprised at how strong the blow was and nothing happened to it. They exclaimed that it had no side effects. It definitely worked. The head of the clan said that if they had had this before, they would not have lost so many people. His partner agreed with him. Ning Tianlin explained to the guys that this was just a small dose of genetic serum. The gray-haired man said that the head of the clan must be worthy and age does not matter. If anyone has doubts about Ning Tianlin's strength or character, they can speak out now. Only the girl raised her hand and said that she had doubts. She asked not to believe him, since he was connected with the authorities. Who knows if he wants to destroy them all? The boy replied that this was just cooperation for the convenience of operations, and he asked why she constantly criticizes him. The girl gave him an incredulous look and explained that she simply did not trust him. Suddenly, a man appeared behind them and exclaimed that trouble had come. He explained that some kind of monster had been released. A terrible, insidious monster appeared in front of them. The system explained to the boy that this was one of the goods from the alien ship. She didn't think they'd bring him here. The huge monster began to open its vile fanged mouth and come closer and closer. The boy prepared his weapon and began to wave it in front of the nasty face of this beast. He tried to cut his body, but realized that it was too strong for him. The elders began to approach to help attack this vile insect. The old man cut off one of the monster's claws. Some bubbles began to appear from it. But after that, his claw grew again. It was as if she had been reborn back. The monster seemed to become even stronger and tried to attack this old man in response. Ning Tianlin asked the old man why he was holding it. Then the old man replied that he could not be killed. He could only be frozen. He explained that someone had deliberately released him. The boy immediately became wary and looked at the monster. He asked, "What if we used ice and fire at the same time to completely destroy his cells and prevent regeneration?" The old man answered, looking at the monster, that this was a good option and worth a try. He raised his weapon and cut the claw in half again. The man glowed with a bright yellow light. The claw split into two parts and they began to watch what would happen next. Ning Tianlin stood up to direct his power towards the evil monster. He focused all his power on the severed claw until it began to grow back together. The old man exclaimed that the claw did not regenerate. It was very good. Ning Tianlin said that now the old man can cut the remaining joints in the same way to deprive him of mobility. The guys carefully watched the claw of this evil, creepy monster. Again, there was some kind of explosion and everything was obscured by a light haze of thick smoke. The elder and the boy were ready. They couldn't see what was inside the smoke. Ning Tianlin exclaimed that things were going hard. The old man asked him not to relax since it was not the end yet. Planes circled above them. Someone warned them that if they moved, they would shoot. Ning Tianlin showed an obscene gesture. He asked if the monster understood his gibberish, but they reacted very harshly to his words. The weapon was pointed towards the boy and a volley was heard. Ning Tianlin was seriously surprised and wondered, who could it be? There was a volley again, and the shot rang out straight towards them. Ning Tianlin said that they really started shooting. The old man replied that if this continues, the army will come here. Today will not end well. The boy replied that we need to take advantage of this chance and change headquarters. Everyone from the Kang clan has gone into hiding, and they will find an opportunity to escape. Let the army deal with this monster. When the explosion occurred, the boy exclaimed that they were probably shooting from cannons. The sharp blade flew towards the opponents. It was cold and merciless. The helicopter was spinning over their heads. The guys in him couldn't understand what the man had just thrown. The co-pilot replied that he didn't know, but it damaged the propeller. A forced landing is required. They noticed the boy and gave the command to shoot quickly before he left. They pointed their weapons directly at Ning Tianlin. The boy felt this and looked in their direction. A man in camouflage uniform sat on his knees. He aimed at the boy. Ning Tianlin was able to dodge the bullet once again. His gaze was very stern and unwavering. The bullet flew straight to his forehead. But he stood motionless and said that such bullets were not at all scary. Meanwhile, the head of the clan threw his weapons towards the restless opponents. Using his powers, he landed right in the center of the helicopter and asked the boy to leave quickly. He asked to attract attention from above, as it was urgently necessary to change headquarters. Ning Tianlin asked him to first take everyone away from the Kang clan, and he would meet with the so-called strongest army in the land. The old man agreed with him, but he said that this jade amulet would help him find it. The old man wished the boy good luck. Ning Tianlin agreed with him and took the amulet. Many feet in boots and camouflage uniforms stood in front of him. The guys with weapons in their hands moved faster and faster. They exclaimed that he was surrounded. The guys were given the order to raise their hands and surrender. They again asked him to give up. The boy called their translator a stupid man. The guys in uniform stood with weapons in their hands and began to shoot in one gulp at their enemy. The boy planted his fists and, despite the bullets, began to run straight towards them. The commander signaled to his men to stop. They did not let go of their weapons. There was an explosion. Clouds of white smoke rose up to the sky, obscuring the view. Ning Tianlin asked if this was all, after which he exclaimed that now it was his turn. The masked man began to look closely and think about what this guy would do now. Ning Tianlin began to accelerate and approach them like lightning. Then the commander raised his weapon and tried to shoot again, but that was not the case. The boy's strength was much stronger and more dangerous than their firearms. The boy held his spear in his hands and stood with his back to them. He looked forward in front of him. Helicopters carrying armed men circled overhead. The system reported that they had sent fighters in his direction. The boy laughed and asked if they were really thinking of destroying him with missiles. In this case, he promised to go where they would not dare to fire rockets. The boy found himself in the financial department. The helicopters continued to circle above him. As Ning Tianlin ran, clouds of thick white smoke curled under his feet. The soldier on the plane exclaimed that things were bad. He realized that the boy was going to the financial district. Ning Tianlin was very angry and asked the warriors how they dared to blow up the financial street. The military said that the target was already on Financial Street. They gave the order to build barricades and evacuate people. The boy thought that it looked like they weren't going to pursue them. The system asked him not to rejoice ahead of time. They probably have some other plan. Ahead, underground, lies the world's largest gold storage facility. The system asked if he wanted to go there. The boy, of course, agreed, and they headed towards the storage facility. Security noticed that someone had broken into the vault and they began to warn everyone else. The alarm started flashing with a bright red light. Ning Tianlin stood in front of the huge system. Suddenly, he clenched his fist and his look completely changed. His eyes were empty and strange. An explosion occurred nearby. Clouds of white smoke enveloped the entire room. It contained a lot of gold bars. Entire shelves were filled with this gold. There was so much of it that the shelves were already bursting with shiny gold ingots. The boy was very surprised by the amount of gold on the shelves. The system turned to him and asked if he wanted to exchange all the gold for vital energy points. The boy immediately agreed, and the system congratulated the owner on receiving 100,000 energy points. Ning Tianlin exclaimed that this was a lot and should be expressed gratitude. Guys in camouflage suits and masks came closer to the building and could not understand what was in front of them. A huge red dragon soared in the sky around tall high-rise buildings and was approaching them. They were very scared and surprised. The guys in suits couldn't figure out what it was. There is something written on it in Chinese. They tried to figure out what this meant. "Welcome to Kangmen." One of the people on the street asked what Kangmen was. The second guy said that it was a red dragon. These are vanished mythical creatures. Could they be the ones their teacher told them to find? The teacher sent them to investigate the disappearance of spirits and soul guides. There were no traces in their country, and he thought that the criminals could have gone abroad. He did not expect that in Chinatown they would stumble upon those who controlled the mythical creatures. One of the guys asked if he wanted to say that those who control mythical creatures may be connected with the disappearance of soul guides. The second one asked the others to watch. He exclaimed that Kangmen even has an official website. They write something about fighting strength. Depending on the level of combat strength within Kangmen, there are different ranks. 10 points of combat strength is a trainee, 30 points is a disciple, 50 points is a manager. The higher the level, the higher the status. Combat strength is determined by physical characteristics, equipment, combat skills, and tactics. Physical characteristics include strength, agility, endurance, and spirit. These can be improved with the help of various pills available on the exchange platform. In addition to pills, you can also exchange combat equipment. One of the guys asked if he had just seen the immortality pill. In 3 days, Kangmen plans to open hero halls around the world to select suitable candidates. Then they will go to find those who are behind it. And now several days have passed. Many people stood in the square. They were very serious and thoughtful. The men stood as if in formation. One of them looked forward as if looking at something. He was tense and moved his eyebrows to his nose. Ning Tianlin watched from the side. He noticed that there were even Taoists here. He thought that spies from governments and the mafia were already strange. The system chuckled and replied that they had come specifically for him. The boy heard something. The system said that those whom he killed at the internet cafe came because of this. Ning Tianlin replied that he understood everything and continued to watch the people in the square. He exclaimed that in this case he could not disappoint them and would meet them personally. One of the guys asked the other what happened. The second replied that he felt like he was being watched. He asked how they were doing with distribution. The guy replied that according to the distribution, they could only meet in the quarterfinals. He asked him not to worry. The second guy said that with their strength, they would easily win the tournament, so that the organizers would definitely show up. But still, the financial street is destroyed, and they say that all the gold from the vault was stolen. Why doesn't the country react to this? They write online that the country no longer has control over the nuclear button. They are afraid that their own nuclear bombs will destroy them. Someone couldn't understand how this was possible and suddenly laughed. But the other person replied that if the country really gets blown up, he will definitely join Kangmen. If they are destroyed, it will only benefit them.